The alarm never sounded because Kane Bishop no longer needed one. 44 years since Vietnam, and his body still woke at 0530 every morning without fail. Some habits the Marine Corps stamped so deep into your bones that not even age could shake them loose. He sat on the edge of his bed in the darkness, bare feet against cold floorboards, and waited for his hands to stop shaking. The tremor came every morning now. Started maybe 5 years back, got worse each winter. The VA doctor called it essential tremor, said it happened to lots of men his age. Nothing to worry about. But Kane knew better. This wasn't age. This was Khe-Sanh in February of '68, shrapnel screaming overhead while he pressed himself into red clay that smelled like copper and shit. This was 44 years of carrying ghosts. He flexed his fingers, watching them steady by degrees in the pre-dawn light filtering through thin curtains. Left hand worse than right. Always had been ever since the day Sergeant Morrison pulled him down into that foxhole and a chunk of mortar casing took the path his head had occupied 1 second before. The scar through his left eyebrow still showed white against weathered skin when he caught his reflection, a permanent reminder that luck and Tank Morrison were the only reasons he made it past 18. The photo frame on his nightstand lay face down, had for 15 years. Kane reached for it with his right hand, hesitated, pulled back. Not yet. First, he had to earn the right to look at her face, and that meant completing the morning ritual that kept him functional. 50 push-ups. His shoulders protested at 30, arms trembling at 40. But he pushed through to 50 because quitting wasn't in the programming. His knees touched the floor on the last 3, a concession to 62 years that would have embarrassed the hell out of him at 30. But nowadays, he took victories where he could find them. Staying alive was victory enough. The shower ran cold because discipline mattered more than comfort. 3 minutes under freezing water, washing away the night sweats and the dreams of rice paddies and the sound of helicopter blades that never quite faded. He dried off methodically, pulled on running clothes that had seen better decades, and tied his boots with the same over-under-through pattern he'd learned in boot camp at Parris Island when Johnson was president, and the whole damn country still thought Vietnam was winnable. 5 miles, every morning. The route never varied. Out his cabin door, down the dirt road to the highway, north for 2.5 miles, then back. His pace had slowed over the years. His knees complained more, but he finished. Always finished. The road through the North Carolina mountains was empty this early. Nothing but pine trees and the occasional deer watching him pass with dark eyes that reminded him of the villagers outside Da Nang, wary and waiting. The sun was climbing over the ridgeline when he returned, painting the sky in shades of orange that looked too much like napalm for his comfort. He made coffee in the kitchen of the small place he'd built with his own hands after retiring from the FBI. Black, no sugar. Another habit from the war, when sugar was a luxury and coffee was fuel. The photo frame still lay face down. He carried his coffee to the small desk by the window and finally, with the same deliberate motion he used for everything else, turned it over. Sarah Bishop smiled at him from her 16th birthday. Blonde hair caught in mid-laugh, blue eyes that were his wife's eyes, wearing the leather jacket he'd given her that morning. The photo was taken October 13th, 2010. She disappeared the next day. 15 years, 5,475 days of searching, and he still didn't know if she was alive or dead. The not knowing was worse than any firefight in the jungle. At least in combat, you knew who was shooting at you. He touched the frame's edge with one finger, careful not to smudge the glass. His daughter would be 31 now if she'd survived. Same age he was when he made special agent with the FBI, when everything still seemed possible, and he thought justice was something you could hold in your hands like evidence. The K-bar knife sat beside the frame, 7 inches of carbon steel in a leather sheath worn smooth by decades of handling. He'd carried it through 13 months in-country, used it for everything from opening sea rations to killing a North Vietnamese soldier in a tunnel so dark he never saw the man's face. The blade was clean now, sharp, waiting. Some tools you kept ready even when you hoped you'd never need them again. Kane drained his coffee, set the mug down, and stood. Time to go to work. Time to keep the promise he'd made to Sarah's photograph every morning for 15 years. I will find you, or I will save others like you. I will not stop I will not quit. Semper Fidelis, always faithful. To the core, to the mission, to the daughter who might already be dead. He grabbed his keys, his wallet, the K-bar out of habit, and walked out into North Carolina's sunshine that felt nothing like the humid hell of Southeast Asia, but somehow always reminded him anyway. The Harley in his driveway was a 1970 Fat Boy that he'd restored himself over 2 winters. Every bolt and gasket replaced or cleaned until the engine purred like it had rolled off the line yesterday. He'd bought it with his first FBI paycheck and kept it running through marriages, births, deaths, and everything else life threw at him. The bike was the one constant, the one thing that never lied or disappeared or died of cancer in a hospital bed, while machines beeped their steady countdown. He straddled the seat, felt the familiar weight settle into his hips, and fired the engine. The rumble vibrated through his chest, drowning out the whisper of ghosts, and he pulled onto the dirt road heading toward the compound where the rest of the broken men gathered to do the work nobody else would. RideSafe headquarters occupied a converted warehouse on the outskirts of a town too small to have a name on most maps. Kane had bought the building in 2010 with the life insurance money from his wife's death, converted it with the help of men who understood what it meant to need purpose after everything else was gone. The sign outside was simple metal lettering. Ride safe. Missing persons recovery. What the sign didn't say was that everyone who worked there had ghosts of their own. Combat veterans, everyone, from a war the country had spent 40 years trying to forget. They'd come home to a nation that spit on them, called them baby killers, refused them jobs and respect and basic human decency. So they had found each other, instead, built their own tribe, created meaning where the world offered only contempt. Kane's Harley was the second bike in the lot. The first belonged to Frank Morrison, which meant Tank had been here since before dawn, same as every morning. The man slept about 4 hours a night, never had needed more, not even in the jungle when sleep was the only escape from the heat and the fear and the knowing that any second could be your last. Inside, the warehouse had been divided into functional spaces: garage bay for working on bikes, office area with desks and computers, conference room with maps covering every wall, small kitchen, and sleeping quarters for those nights when cases ran long and going home felt like surrender. The whole place smelled like motor oil, coffee, and purpose. Tank stood at the coffee maker, all 6'4" and 280 of him, gray beard down to his chest, wearing a ride-safe t-shirt that had seen too many washings. He looked up when Kane entered, nodded once, and poured a second cup without being asked. "Morning, Gunny." "Morning, Lieutenant." The nicknames dated back to Vietnam when Tank was a gunnery sergeant, and Kane was a green second lieutenant who didn't know his ass from a fighting hole. Tank had kept him alive through his first month in country, taught him which sounds meant incoming and which meant outgoing, showed him how to read the jungle and the Ville and the face of men who'd seen too much dying. By the time Kane rotated home, he'd made first lieutenant, and Tank had more confirmed kills than anyone wanted to count. 44 years later, and they still use the old ranks because some bonds transcended time and titles. Tank had been the first call Kane made after Sarah disappeared, and the big man had shown up at his door 6 hours later with nothing but a duffel bag and a promise: "We find her, or we die trying." Neither had happened yet, but the trying never stopped. They stood at the counter drinking coffee in comfortable silence, the kind only shared by men who'd bled together. Outside, the sun climbed higher. Inside, the mission board on the far wall tracked their ongoing war against the darkness. 47 red pins marked successful recoveries. Women and children found, returned to families, given second chances. 23 yellow pins marked active cases, people still missing, still waiting, still hoping someone gave enough of a damn to look. And one black pin, Sarah Bishop, case number 001, unsolved since October 14th, 2010. Tank finished his coffee, rinsed the mug, and asked the question he asked every morning: "Any new leads on Sarah?" Kane shook his head the same way he always did. "Nothing." Tank nodded, accepting the answer he'd heard 1,000 times before. "We'll keep looking." They would, until the day they found her, or the day they died trying. Those were the only two acceptable outcomes. The door opened and Doc Harrison shuffled in, moving with the careful gait of a man whose knees had given out somewhere between hue and old age. He was 64, looked 80, carried a medical bag everywhere he went because some responsibilities you never retired from. In Vietnam, he'd been a Navy corpsman attached to Kane's platoon, saved 34 Marines during 13 months of hell, earned a Silver Star, and nightmares that would last forever. He'd also failed to save Tank's best friend, a kid from Iowa named Danny Kowalski, who bled out from a sucking chest wound while Doc worked frantically with equipment that wasn't good enough and training that wasn't sufficient and hands that shook just like they were shaking now as he poured his morning coffee. The three of them stood in the kitchen area, gray-haired men who should have been thinking about retirement and grandchildren and golf. Instead, they thought about missing persons and trafficking networks and the work that never ended because evil never slept. Doc pulled a bottle from his pocket, shook out 2 pills, swallowed them dry. VA prescriptions, same as most of them took. Antidepressants, anti-anxiety, sleeping pills that didn't work, pain meds for joints that remembered jungle rot and parasites, and humping 80-pound packs through country where the trees wanted you dead. "How you holding up, Doc?" The old corpsman managed a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Still breathing." That's a victory. It was. At their age, with their history, every day above ground counted as winning. The morning routine continued. Miguel Reyes arrived at 7 sharp, the youngest member of the team at 29, brilliant with computers in a way that seemed like magic to men who'd learned to type on IBM Selectrics. His father had been Corporal Jesus Reyes, killed saving Kane's life during a firefight in 1970. Kane had tracked down the widow after the war, helped raise Miguel, paid for his education, and given him a job the day he graduated. Miguel called Kane Mr. Bishop, despite being told 100 times to use his first name, because some signs of respect ran too deep to abandon. He set up at his workstation, multiple monitors flickering to life, and began the daily routine of scanning missing persons databases, running facial recognition software, checking for new leads on any of the 23 yellow pins. 7:30 brought Pastor James Cole, who insisted everyone call him preacher despite having left active ministry 15 years back. 70 years old, Army chaplain in Vietnam, he'd given last rites to too many dying boys and eventually decided that God either didn't care or wasn't listening. But he still carried his worn Bible and could quote scripture when someone needed comfort. Even if he no longer believed the words himself, he poured coffee, settled into a chair with a groan that spoke of arthritis and old wounds, and opened the Bible to a random page out of habit. The morning reading was from Psalms. "Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil." "Bullshit," preacher muttered, and closed the book. By 8 o'clock, the day team was assembled. Roy Williams came in next, call sign Crow because he'd been a tunnel rat in Vietnnam, small and wiry enough to squeeze into spaces that terrified normal men. He was 63, permanently claustrophobic from those days crawling through Viet Cong tunnels with nothing but a pistol and a flashlight, finding weapons caches, and sometimes finding enemy soldiers in the darkness. Crow had also been the platoon's demolitions expert, the guy who could look at a bridge or a bunker and know exactly where to place charges for maximum effect. These days, he mostly worked on motorcycles, but he still kept his skills current because you never knew when you'd need to make something explode. Last to arrive was Sam Chen, call sign Shadow because the man moved like smoke and hit like a hammer. 66 years old, former MACVSOG, the studies and observations group that ran classified operations nobody talked about in polite company. Shadow had spent his war slipping across borders that officially didn't exist, killing people whose deaths officially didn't happen, gathering intelligence that officially never existed. He was Chinese American, spoke fluent Vietnamese and French, could disappear in any crowd, and had spent the last 40 years trying to forget the things he'd done in the name of freedom and democracy and all the other words politicians used when they meant murder. The team, Kane's brothers, men who'd seen hell and come back marked, who'd spent decades trying to find redemption in a world that didn't care whether they lived or died. Ride Safe gave them purpose, gave them a mission. Let them be warriors one more time in a fight that actually mattered. Kane stood at the head of the conference table and waited for everyone to settle. The morning briefing was ritual, necessary, the way they stayed coordinated and focused. Tank had fresh coffee, Doc had his pills, Miguel had his computers. Everyone else had their ghosts and their determination. Status reports, Kane said. Miguel went first. Facial recognition flagged 3 possibles overnight. 2 were false positives already cleared. The third is a maybe on the Richardson girl spotted at a truck stop in Tennessee. I'm running enhanced analysis now. That was case number 17. A 14-year-old from Kentucky who'd vanished from a shopping mall 6 months ago. Local police called it a runaway. The parents knew better. They'd hired Ride Safe when official channels failed them. Keep me updated. Shadow, what's the latest from your sources? Shadow consulted notes written in cramped handwriting. West Coast Network is moving product through Portland, but my contact says it's small-scale, local operation, not connected to our primary targets. However, I'm hearing whispers about a new trafficking route along I-40, targeting women at rest stops between Nashville and Wilmington. I-40, the same interstate where Sarah had disappeared. Kane's jaw tightened imperceptibly. How solid is the intel? Solid enough. 3 women reported missing from rest stops in the last 8 weeks, all fitting the same profile. Late 20s, traveling alone, educated. Local authorities aren't connecting the dots because different jurisdictions. Connect them. I want a full workup by end of day. Already on it, Miguel confirmed, fingers flying across his keyboard. Doc had medical updates on 2 recovered victims currently in safe houses, both doing as well as could be expected, given what they'd survived. Crow reported that the motorcycles were all maintained and ready for rapid deployment. Preacher mentioned that he'd been in contact with families of 3 active cases, providing spiritual support and updates. The briefing wrapped up. Everyone dispersed to their tasks. Kane returned to his office, a small room with a desk, filing cabinets, and walls covered in maps and photographs. So many faces, so many missing, so many who'd never be found. His desk phone rang at 8:47. The caller ID showed Sheriff Rita Morgan's direct line. Kane picked up. Bishop. Rita's voice came through, tight and professional, the tone she used when something was seriously wrong. Kane, I need you to come to the Last Stop Diner. Now, what's the situation? Possible trafficking case. Woman wrote help on a napkin, local waitress noticed. Alerted some bikers. They subdued the suspect, violently. Kane's hand tightened on the phone. Injuries? Suspect has broken wrist, possible concussion. He pulled a gun, so it's justified. But Kane, the woman he took, her name is Sophie Marshall. The name hit him like incoming artillery. Sophie Marshall, Tommy Marshall's daughter. Tommy, who'd taken 3 rounds meant for Kane during an ambush in the Mekong Delta, who died at 19 years old in Doc Harrison's arms while the medics screamed for a medevac that arrived 10 minutes too late. Kane had promised Tommy he'd look after his family if anything happened. Tommy's wife had died in 2015 from cancer. Sophie was all that remained of a man who'd sacrificed everything. I'm 10 minutes out, Kane said, and hung up before Rita could respond. He grabbed his jacket, his keys, the K-bar because old habits died hardest. Tank looked up from the map he was studying. Boss, Tommy Marshall's daughter, trafficking case. The Last Stop Diner. Tank's face went granite hard. Tommy Marshall had been his friend too, part of their tight-knit platoon, one of the too many who never made it home. I'm coming with you. No, I need you here coordinating. If this goes sideways, someone has to keep Ride Safe running. Tank understood. Chain of command mattered, even now, even when every instinct screamed to go help a brother's family. Copy that. Radio if you need backup. Kane headed for the door, then stopped and turned back. Tank, if something happens to me out there, don't. Listen, you lead Ride Safe. Keep the mission going. Promise me. Tank met his eyes with the same steady gaze that had kept Kane sane through firefights and ambushes and nights when the fear got so thick you could taste it. Nothing's going to happen. But yeah, I promise. Kane nodded once and walked out into sunshine that felt all wrong for the darkness gathering in his chest. The Last Stop Diner sat at the junction of 2 highways, a chrome and neon relic from the 1950s that somehow survived into the 21st century through stubbornness and cheap coffee. Kane had stopped there 100 times over the years, knew the owner by name, knew which booths had the best view of the parking lot, knew that the apple pie was decent and the coffee was terrible but consistent. Today, the parking lot was full of sheriff's vehicles and one ambulance. Light bars painting the building in strobing red and blue. Kane parked his Harley next to a row of motorcycles, big touring bikes, well-maintained, the kind serious riders favored. 6 bikes, which meant 6 bikers, probably the ones who'd subdued the suspect. Sheriff Rita Morgan stood by her cruiser talking to a deputy. She looked up when Kane approached, and something in her face made his stomach tighten. Rita was 58, former Army MP who'd served in Desert Storm, tough as any man and smarter than most. She didn't rattle easy. Right now, she looked rattled. Kane, Rita. She gestured toward the ambulance, where a young woman sat wrapped in a blanket, paramedics checking her vitals. That's Sophie Marshall, taken 3 days ago in Memphis. Been held since then. Finally saw a chance to signal for help when her captor stopped here for gas. She looks like Tommy, Kane said quietly. Same dark hair, same stubborn set to the jaw. Tommy had looked about 16 when he died, baby-faced and scared and trying so hard to be brave. The man who took her is in custody. Rita nodded toward the second patrol car where a figure sat in the back seat, hands cuffed behind him. Name's Victor Cross. Ring any bells? The name detonated in Kane's brain like a Willie Peter grenade, white-hot and spreading. Victor Cross, CIA operative recruited in Saigon, 1974, when the war was already lost but the corruption was just getting started. Young kid, maybe 17, smart and ruthless, and willing to do the dirty work that kept the heroin flowing and the black market money rolling and the whole rotten system operating while American soldiers died for nothing. Kane had investigated Victor Cross in 2005, when he was still FBI, when he thought the law actually worked and justice was more than a word politicians used at election time. Trafficking, smuggling, murder for hire, connections to organized crime from Bangkok to Baltimore. The case had been solid, airtight, ready to indict. Then orders came down from above. Stand down, political considerations. The investigation was closed, the evidence sealed, and Kane was told very clearly that pursuing it further would be career suicide. He'd pursued it anyway, quietly, on his own time. Got close enough to rattle some cages in Washington. Got close enough that someone very powerful made a phone call, and suddenly Kane was being encouraged to take early retirement. And the choice was retire with full pension or be fired and lose everything. He'd retired, taken the pension, built Ride Safe, and spent the last 15 years wondering who Victor Cross worked for, who had that much power, who scared the FBI badly enough to kill a righteous case. Now Victor Cross was sitting in a patrol car 20 feet away, and Kane's trigger finger itched for the weight of his old service weapon. I know him, Kane said. His voice came out flat, dead, the tone he used when emotion would be a liability. I investigated him in 2005 for trafficking. Case was killed from above. Rita's eyes narrowed. How far above? High enough that I couldn't touch it. High enough that it cost me my career. She absorbed that information, fitting pieces together in the chess game. That was law enforcement in a corrupt system. Then we need to be very careful how we handle this. He's already lawyered up, won't say anything without immunity. Immunity for what? He claims he'll give up the whole network. Names, locations, financial records. Says he can bring down the entire East Coast trafficking operation, but only if he gets full immunity and witness protection. Kane's laugh was bitter as spent brass. He's playing you. Victor Cross doesn't give up anything unless he benefits. Whatever he's offering, there's an angle you're not seeing, maybe. But legally, we have to consider it. Without his cooperation, we've got one kidnapping charge, and that's it. With his cooperation, we could dismantle a network that's been operating for decades. She was right, Kane knew. The system required deals with devils because devils held the cards. But something about this felt wrong, felt like a setup, felt like Victor Cross was exactly where he wanted to be. Let me talk to him, Kane said. You know I can't authorize that. You are not law enforcement anymore. Then unofficially. Let me talk to him unofficially. Rita studied him for a long moment, weighing protocols against practicality, rules against results. Finally, she nodded toward the diner. First, go talk to Sophie. She's been asking for you. Said her father talked about you before he died. Kane walked toward the ambulance where Sophie Marshall sat with a blanket around her shoulders and hollow eyes that had seen things no 28-year-old should see. The paramedics stepped aside to give them space. Sophie looked up, recognition flickering across her face. Mr. Bishop? Her voice was hoarse, probably from screaming or crying or both. Kane sat down beside her on the ambulance bumper, careful to keep his body language open and non-threatening. Combat taught you how to read people, how to make them feel safe even when safety was a lie. Your dad was a good Marine, Kane said. Best I ever served with. The words broke something in her. Tears spilled down her cheeks, and she started shaking, months of fear and trauma finally finding release. Kane did what he'd done for countless traumatized soldiers. He waited, patient and present, until the storm passed. When she could speak again, her voice came in fragments. He took me 3 days ago in Memphis. I was investigating. I'm a journalist. I was looking into disappearances along the interstate, women vanishing from truck stops, and I had a source who promised evidence, but when I got there, he was waiting instead. Victor Cross. She nodded. He said my source was dead. Said I'd asked too many questions. He drugged me. I woke up zip-tied in the back of his SUV. He kept me in a motel room, kept saying he was moving me to the facility tonight, that I'd disappear like the others. Kane's jaw clenched. The facility. That confirmed this was bigger than one kidnapping, bigger than one trafficker. This was organized, systematic, the kind of operation that required infrastructure and protection and somebody very powerful looking the other way. You're safe now, he said, even though safety was temporary at best and the danger was far from over. Am I? Sophie's eyes met his, and he saw Tommy Marshall looking back at him across 44 years in an unbridgeable gulf of death. Because whoever Victor works for, they're still out there, and they know who I am now. They know I was investigating them. She was right. Smart girl, just like her father had been smart, capable of reading a tactical situation and understanding the angles. Victor Cross wouldn't have acted alone. He answered to someone, and that someone wouldn't appreciate a journalist digging into their operation. I promised your father I'd look after his family, Kane said. That promise doesn't expire. My father died when I was 3 years old. You don't owe me anything. I owe him everything. He took bullets meant for me, saved my life. So yeah, I owe his daughter whatever protection I can provide. Sophie wiped her eyes, straightened her shoulders, and Kane saw the survivor emerging from the victim. She'd been through hell, but she hadn't broken. Tommy Marshall's genes ran strong. There are others, she said, women like me, dozens of them. Victor mentioned a network, facilities, shipments. This isn't just him. It's organized, it's big, and it's been operating for a long time. I know, and we're going to stop it. How? If the FBI couldn't stop them in 2005, how can you stop them now? Because I'm not FBI anymore. I don't have to follow rules that protect criminals. Rita approached, interrupting before Kane could say anything else that might constitute conspiracy. Sophie, we need to get you to the hospital for a full examination. Then we'll take your statement and get you into protective custody. Protective custody won't help if they have people on the inside, Sophie said. Victor made phone calls, talked to someone he called the broker. Whoever that is, he has resources, connections, people everywhere. The broker. Kane filed the name away, added it to the growing list of questions that needed answers. We'll keep you safe, Rita promised, and helped Sophie into the ambulance. As the doors closed, Sophie looked at Kane one more time through the window, and her lips moved silently. Help them. The others. The ambulance pulled away, siren wailing. Kane stood in the parking lot watching it go, thinking about Tommy Marshall dying in the mud, thinking about promises made and promises kept, thinking about how the dead never really left you. They just waited patiently for you to join them. He turned and walked toward the patrol car where Victor Cross sat. Rita intercepted him halfway. I can't let you interrogate him. I'm not going to interrogate him. I'm just going to look. That's all? That's all. She stepped aside, skeptical but willing. Kane approached the patrol car, stopped a few feet from the window, and studied the man who'd haunted his investigation 15 years ago. Victor Cross looked older now, mid-40s, but still had that same cold competence in his eyes. His wrist was casted, face bruised from where the bikers had worked him over, but he sat straight and calm like a man who knew his value and wasn't worried about his situation. Their eyes met through the glass. Victor smiled, slow and knowing. Then he mouthed two words, clear and deliberate. "Hello, Bishop." Kane didn't react, didn't give him the satisfaction. Just stood there, stone-faced, letting the silence stretch. Finally, Victor leaned forward as much as the cuffs allowed and mouthed more words. "I know where Sarah is." The world tilted. Kane's hands clenched into fists, nails biting into palms. The only thing keeping him from ripping the car door off its hinges and beating answers out of Victor Cross with his bare hands. Rita was beside him instantly. "What did he say?" Kane's voice came out strangled. "He says he knows where Sarah is." "Your daughter?" "But she's been missing 15 years. How could he?" She trailed off as the implications sank in. Victor Cross had been active 15 years ago. Victor Cross worked in trafficking. Victor Cross might have been involved in Sarah's disappearance. "I need to talk to him," Kane said. "Now, no lawyer, no recording, just him and me. That's completely against protocol. I don't give a damn about protocol. He knows what happened to my daughter." Rita struggled visibly between duty and empathy, between the law she'd sworn to uphold and the reality that sometimes the law protected the guilty more than the innocent. Finally, she made a decision that would probably cost her career. 5 minutes, in the diner, booth in the back, no witnesses, no recording, and if anyone asks, I was in the bathroom and didn't see anything. 5 minutes is all I need. She went to talk to her deputies, drew them away from the patrol cars, gave Kane the window he needed. He opened the back door, grabbed Victor by the arm, and half-dragged him into the diner before anyone could object. The diner was empty except for a terrified waitress hiding in the kitchen and 6 bikers sitting in the corner booth watching everything with the alert calm of men who knew how to handle violence. Their president, a big bastard with road dust on his jacket and a gray beard, nodded once at Kane. "We'll make sure nobody interrupts." Kane appreciated the assistance but didn't acknowledge it. He shoved Victor into the back booth, the one with a view of both exits, and sat across from him. Up close, Victor looked even more pleased with himself, like this was all going according to plan. 5 minutes, Kane said. "Tell me about Sarah." Victor settled back as much as the cuffs allowed. Still direct, still a Marine. Some things never change. "Cut the bullshit. You said you know where my daughter is." "I do. But information like that has value, wouldn't you say?" "Name your price. Full immunity, federal witness protection, new identity, new life, somewhere sunny and far from here." "That's not my call. I'm not FBI anymore. But you have friends who are. Rita Morgan will listen to you. You can make this happen." Kane wanted to snap the man's neck, wanted to feel Victor's windpipe collapse under his thumbs, wanted to watch the life drain from his eyes, the way life had drained from too many good men in the jungle. But Sarah, the possibility, however slim, that she was still alive. "Prove you know something," Kane said. "Give me something that proves you're not just fishing." Victor leaned forward, voice dropping to barely above a whisper. October 14th, 2010, Greensboro Mall, parking lot, black SUV. Your daughter got in willingly because I showed her FBI credentials. Very convincing forgeries. She thought she was being recruited for some youth outreach program. Kane's blood turned to ice. Those details had never been public, never been in the news. The only way Victor could know them was if he'd been there. Where did you take her? That's the question, isn't it? And the answer is worth full immunity. She was 16 years old. She was a bum. Nothing personal. Kane's fist slammed into the table hard enough to crack the laminate. Everything about this is personal. She was my daughter, my child, and that's why it worked. The colonel wanted someone who'd hurt you specifically. Your daughter was leverage, a message, a lesson about what happens when you investigate the wrong people. The colonel. There it was again, the phantom who'd killed Kane's FBI career, who'd protected Victor Cross, who apparently had orchestrated Sarah's kidnapping. "Who's the colonel?" Victor smiled. That information also has a price. Rita appeared at the booth. Time's up. His lawyer just arrived. Kane stood slowly, every muscle screaming to do violence, to take what he needed instead of negotiating for it. But he'd been a Marine long enough to know when tactical retreat was the smart play. Think about my offer, Victor said as Rita pulled him up from the booth. Full immunity, witness protection, and I'll tell you everything. Where Sarah went, who ordered it, how the whole network operates. But I need your word that the deal happens. Kane didn't respond, just watched as Rita led Victor outside to where a suit-wearing lawyer was already raising hell about improper interrogation procedures. The moment was over. The window closed. He sat back down in the booth alone and tried to process what had just happened. Victor Cross claimed to know where Sarah was, claimed he'd taken her on someone's orders, claimed this colonel person had targeted her specifically to send Kane a message. If it was true, that meant Sarah's disappearance wasn't random. It was calculated, deliberate, a weapon aimed at Kane because he'd gotten too close to something powerful and dangerous. If it was true, that meant whoever ordered it was still out there, still protected, still operating with impunity. And if it was true, that meant Sarah might still be alive. The biker's president approached, moving surprisingly quiet for such a big man. Mind if I sit? Kane gestured to the opposite seat. The man settled in, studied Kane with eyes that had seen their share of road and trouble. Name's Jim. Friends call me Big Jim, which ain't creative, but it's accurate. Couldn't help but overhear some of that conversation. I appreciate your discretion. We look out for each other on the road. Bikers, veterans, people who give a damn. Heard you run Ride Safe. We've sent cases your way before. Kane nodded, recognizing the network now. Motorcycle clubs weren't all criminal enterprises. Many were just men who needed the wind and the Brotherhood, who rode for charity and helped find missing kids and did the work that society ignored. This thing today, Big Jim continued, the waitress who spotted the problem. She's got good instincts. You should talk to her before you leave. Where is she? Kitchen. Been hiding since the gun came out. Name's Elena something. Works the late shift usually, but she pulled a double today. Kane found Elena Hayes in the kitchen, sitting on a stack of milk crates, staring at nothing. She looked to be late 20s, dark hair pulled back, the kind of tired that came from working too many hours for too little money. When Kane entered, she flinched. I'm not going to hurt you, he said gently. I just wanted to thank you for what you did today. I didn't do anything. I just wrote a note. You saved a woman's life. That's not nothing. Elena looked up at him, and Kane saw something familiar in her eyes. Guilt. The weight of wondering if you'd done enough, if you'd acted soon enough, if maybe someone else had suffered because you'd hesitated. There was another girl, Elena said quietly. 5 years ago, I was traveling through, stopped at a rest stop on I-40 near Durham. Saw a girl who looked uncomfortable with the man she was with. Expensive suit, black SUV, and something just felt wrong. Kane's pulse quickened. When exactly was this? October 2019. I remember because it was right before Halloween. The girl went to the bathroom and didn't come back. I found her phone outside, told myself I was being paranoid, that it was none of my business. Left without reporting it. What did the girl look like? Young, maybe 22, 23, college student type, Asian American, I think. Pretty, scared. Kane pulled out his phone, scrolled through photos until he found the one he was looking for. Jessica Chen, missing person case from 2019. Is this her? Elena stared at the photo and her face went white. That's her. Oh my God, that's her. Is she, she disappeared, never found. You're the only witness who ever reported seeing her with a suspect. And I didn't report it. I saw something wrong and I drove away. 5 years she's been missing, and I could have. Kane sat down on another crate, close enough to be present but not threatening. You were a civilian who noticed something felt off. That's more than most people do. The fact that you're carrying guilt about it tells me you're exactly the kind of person who should be paying attention. But if I'd said something then maybe nothing would have changed. Or maybe you'd have ended up like Sophie Marshall, taken and trafficked and lucky to survive. You can't rewrite the past. You can only learn from it and do better next time. Like today, with the napkin. Like today, with the napkin. You acted. You saved someone. That matters. Elena wiped her eyes, pulled herself together with visible effort. The man you were talking to in the booth, the one in custody, is he connected to what happened to Jessica Chen? Possibly. I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. She stood, straightened her shoulders, and Kane saw determination replacing guilt. If you need someone to testify, to identify him, I'll do it. I owe that much to Jessica Chen. I owe that much to every woman I didn't help. I'll keep that in mind. In the meantime, be careful. The people Victor Cross works for don't appreciate witnesses. I understand. Kane left her his card. If you remember anything else, or if anything feels wrong, call me, day or night. She took the card, studied it, and nodded. Ride safe. I've heard of you. You find missing people. We try. We don't always succeed, but we try. That's more than most people do. Kane left the diner and found Rita standing by her cruiser, looking exhausted. Victor's lawyer was raising hell about procedures, claiming his client had been interrogated without counsel present, threatening lawsuits and complaints and every other legal weapon in the arsenal. This is going to blow back on me, Rita said. I probably just ended my career. Not if we make it worth something. What did Victor tell his lawyer? That he wants to make a deal, full immunity in exchange for giving up the entire network. Names, locations, financial records, everything. And his lawyer believes he can deliver? His lawyer believes Victor knows enough to be valuable. Whether that includes your daughter, I don't know. But Kane, you need to understand something. Even if we make the deal, even if Victor gives up information, there's no guarantee it'll lead to Sarah, I know, but it's more than I've had in 15 years. Rita pulled out her phone, made a call. Within 30 seconds, she was talking to someone at the FBI field office in Charlotte, explaining the situation, requesting that someone with authority come handle the Victor Cross situation because it was bigger than local sheriff's jurisdiction. While she talked, Kane walked back to where the bikers still sat on their motorcycles, engines idling. Big Jim killed his bike when Kane approached. Appreciate the help in there, Kane said. Like I said, we'd look out for each other. The waitress, Elena, she's good people. Been working here 2 years, never any trouble. Always tips the charity jar when we do rides for missing kids. She's carrying guilt from something that happened 5 years ago. Aren't we all? Big Jim's expression turned somber. I lost my daughter to an overdose in 2015. Pills that came from somewhere, sold by someone, part of a pipeline that nobody seems able to shut down. So when that girl wrote help on a napkin, we weren't about to let it slide. Your daughter, I'm sorry for your loss. We're all sorry for our losses. Question is what we do about it. The rumble of engines faded as the bikers pulled out, heading back to whatever roads called them. Kane stood in the parking lot watching them disappear, thinking about all the broken people trying to fix a broken world, thinking about how sometimes that was enough and sometimes it wasn't. His phone buzzed. Tank texting. Status? Kane replied, complicated, heading back to compound. Assemble everyone. The ride back took 20 minutes through mountain roads that twisted like memories, past small towns that still flew American flags and pretended the country hadn't forgotten them. Kane's mind churned through what he knew, what he suspected, what he feared. Victor Cross had taken Sarah on orders from someone called the Colonel. Victor Cross was willing to trade information for immunity. The information allegedly included Sarah's location, the network structure, and the identity of the people running it. But Victor Cross was a professional liar, a man who'd spent decades in the shadows doing dirty work for dirty people. Trusting him would be insane. Not pursuing what he offered would be impossible. The ride-safe compound appeared ahead, and Kane felt the familiar tension of coming home to a place that was equal parts sanctuary and command post. Tank's bike was out front along with several others. Doc's ancient pickup truck sat in its usual spot. Everyone was here, which meant Tank had already briefed them that something significant was developing. Inside, the team waited in the conference room. Tank at the head of the table, Doc and Preacher on one side, Shadow and Crow on the other, Miguel at his computer station. They all looked up when Kane entered, and he saw the same expression on every face. Ready for orders, ready for action, ready to follow him into whatever hell was coming. He laid it out clean and direct, the way Marines preferred their briefings. Sophie Marshall kidnapped by Victor Cross. Bikers and a waitress intervene. Sophie rescued. Victor in custody, making immunity deal. Claims he knows where Sarah is. Claims he can deliver the whole network. Silence when he finished. Then Tank asked the question everyone was thinking. You believe him? I believe he knows something. Whether it's the truth or a trap, that's the gamble. What does your gut say? Shadow's voice was quiet but intense. My gut says this is connected to the investigation I ran in 2005. Someone killed that case from high enough up that the FBI rolled over. Victor worked for someone with serious power. He called them the Colonel. Preacher's head snapped up. The Colonel? Did he give a name? No, but he said this person ordered Sarah's kidnapping specifically to send me a message about investigating the wrong people. Doc shook his head slowly. Jesus Christ, your daughter wasn't random. She was targeted. Which means whoever ordered it is still out there, still protected, still operating. Crow, ever practical, cut to the tactical question. What's the play? We can't trust the FBI if they rolled over 15 years ago. We can't trust local law enforcement to handle something this big. So what do? We prepare for both outcomes, Kane said. Outcome 1. Victor's deal goes through, he provides information. We follow up independently. Outcome 2. Victor's playing games, the deal falls apart, and we find another way to get answers. What other way? Miguel asked. The old-fashioned way. We investigate, we dig, we follow the money and the connections until we find who Victor really works for. Shadow leaned forward, elbows on the table. If this Colonel person has the power to kill FBI investigations and orchestrate kidnappings, they'll have serious security. Going after them won't be like our usual recovery operations, I know, which is why I need to know right now before we go any further. Are you all in? Because this isn't just another case. This is personal for me. If you want out, now's the time. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then Tank's gravelly voice cut through the tension. Sarah Bishop is family. We don't leave family behind. Semper Fi. Semper Fidelis, Doc echoed. Always faithful, Preacher added. And for once, his voice held conviction instead of cynicism. The rest chimed in one by one, the old Latin motto binding them the way it had bound Marines for 2.5 centuries. Always faithful, to the mission, to each other, to the daughter one of their own had lost. Kane felt something shift in his chest, the weight of command mixing with the warmth of brotherhood. These men would follow him into hell because they'd already been there together and survived. Whatever came next, they'd face it as a team. All right, Kane said. Miguel, I need full background on Victor Cross. Everything from his CIA recruitment forward, financial records, known associates, travel history, anything that might point to who he reports to. Already running it, Miguel confirmed, fingers flying across keyboard. Shadow, reach out to your intelligence contacts. Someone knows who the Colonel is. Vietnam era, high ranking, access to resources decades later. That's a specific profile. On it. Doc, coordinate with Rita Morgan's office. Make sure Sophie Marshall gets proper medical care and secure protection. Use our safe house if necessary. Consider it done. Crow, I want our vehicles ready for rapid deployment. We might need to move fast when information breaks. Bikes in the van will be ready within the hour. Preacher, contact the families of our active cases. Let them know we might have a lead on a major network. Manage expectations, but keep hope alive. The old chaplain nodded, already pulling out his worn contact list. Tank, you're with me. We need to review everything from the 2005 investigation. Files, notes, anything I kept from when the case got killed. Tank stood. The basement? The basement. They descended stairs into the converted storage area that served as RideSafe's archive. File boxes lined metal shelving, organized by year and case number. Kane found the box marked FBI Investigation 2005, Victor Cross, and pulled it down. Inside were photocopies of everything he'd managed to preserve when the official case got closed. Surveillance photos, financial records, witness statements, connection charts mapping out a trafficking network that spanned from Southeast Asia to the East Coast. He spread it across the work table while Tank watched. The old gunnery sergeant had seen these files before, had helped Kane organize them when rage and frustration needed an outlet. Look at this, Kane said, pointing to a financial record. shell company in the Cayman Islands, used to funnel money from various sources. I traced it back to three principal investors. Two were drug cartels we identified. The third was listed as R.C. Castellano Holdings. R.C., Tank mused. Richard Castellano. Kane pulled out another document, this one a military service record he'd obtained through back channels. Colonel Richard Castellano, U.S. Army, Vietnam era. Served in Saigon from 68 through 75. Ran logistics and supply operations, which in Vietnam meant black market operations, Tank said. Everyone knew Saigon was corrupt as hell. If you ran logistics, you controlled the flow of everything from weapons to whiskey to women. Exactly. And look at this. Kane tapped another page. Castellano took early retirement in 75, right when Saigon fell. Walked away with full pension and honors. Settled in North Carolina. Became a businessman. Built a fortune in import-export. Import-export being code for smuggling. I couldn't prove it in 2005. Every time I got close, doors slammed shut. Witnesses recanted. Evidence disappeared. And then I got the call from my supervisor. Drop it or lose everything. And you think Castellano is the colonel that Victor mentioned? It fits. Right era, right location, right connections. And if he's been operating for 50 years, he'd have the infrastructure to orchestrate something like Sarah's kidnapping. Tank studied the documents with the careful attention of a man who'd spent his war reading terrain and enemy positions. So we've got Victor Cross, who reports to the colonel. The colonel is probably Richard Castellano, a decorated Army officer who's actually been running criminal enterprises since Vietnam. And Castellano ordered your daughter kidnapped because you got too close to exposing him. That's the theory. How do we prove it? We don't. Not yet. But when Victor makes his immunity deal, if he confirms Castellano's involvement, then we have a target. And if Victor doesn't confirm it, then we go after Castellano anyway. But we do it careful and we do it smart because he's survived this long by being protected and connected. They worked in silence for another hour, reviewing files, making notes, building the case they'd never been allowed to build 15 years ago. Upstairs, the rest of the team worked their assignments. By early afternoon, a picture was emerging. Miguel came down with a printout. Boss, you need to see this. The paper showed a property record. Richard Castellano, owner of a private estate outside Puerto Viejo, Costa Rica, 20 acres on the Caribbean coast. Purchased in 2003 for cash. Costa Rica has no extradition treaty with the U.S. for certain crimes, Miguel explained. It's a common haven for people avoiding prosecution. How current is this? I cross-referenced with Costa Rican property tax records. He paid the bill last month. He's either living there or maintaining it as a safe house. Kane studied the satellite imagery Miguel had pulled up on his tablet. Large compound, main house, guest cottages, security infrastructure, visible even from orbit. This is where he'd go if things got hot, Tank observed. Bolt hole in a country that won't extradite him, which means if we're going to move against him, it has to be before he runs. Kane's phone rang. Rita Morgan's number, he answered. Bishop. Kane, we have a problem. Victor Cross's transport to federal custody was just ambushed on Highway 74. 2 guards dead. Victor is gone. The words hit like enemy fire. When? 20 minutes ago. I just got the call. FBI is responding, but whoever hit that transport was professional, well-equipped, and knew exactly when and where to strike. Inside job. That's what I'm thinking, which means Victor was never planning to cooperate. This was all theater to buy time for extraction, or someone didn't want him cooperating, someone who couldn't risk what he might say. Either way, we've got a cop-killer situation and a trafficking suspect in the wind. FBI is putting together a manhunt, but Kane, if Victor was telling the truth about knowing where Sarah is, then I just lost my only lead in 15 years. He hung up and relayed the information to Tank and Miguel. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Victor escaped, Crow said from the doorway. He'd been listening from the stairs. So either he played us and had an exit strategy all along, or his boss decided he was a liability and extracted him before he could talk. Both possibilities lead to the same conclusion, Shadow added, appearing beside Crow. Someone is cleaning house, tying up loose ends, And your daughter is a loose end, Doc said quietly. If they took her to send you a message 15 years ago, and now you're actively investigating again, they won't risk her testifying. Kane finished the thought. If she's still alive, she's in danger. If she's not alive, I need to know. Preacher cleared his throat. There's another possibility we're not considering. What's that? Victor's escape could be an opportunity. If his extraction team pulls him out, they'll take him somewhere secure. If we can track that somewhere, we find the colonel, Shadow concluded. We find the network's headquarters. Miguel was already typing. I can monitor law enforcement channels, see if any witnesses reported the ambush. Maybe we get a vehicle description, a direction of travel, something to work with. The team mobilized with the efficiency of men who'd spent decades responding to crisis. Shadow made calls to intelligence contacts. Crow prepped the vehicles for deployment. Doc coordinated with local hospitals in case wounded suspects showed up. Preacher contacted victim assistance networks to see if anyone had information about recent trafficking movements. Tank and Kane returned to the conference room and stared at the map of North Carolina with its pins marking cases and locations and the dark web of connections they'd been building for 15 years. We're missing something, Kane said. Victor didn't just escape. He left me a message during that interrogation. Said the colonel wanted to hurt me specifically. Why? Because I investigated him in 2005? That's personal, but it's not personal enough to justify kidnapping my daughter. Maybe it goes back further, Tank suggested. Vietnam? You served under Castellano briefly, right? 6 weeks, right before I made lieutenant and transferred to a different unit. Kane searched his memory for details buried under 44 years of other memories. It was during the wind down, late '69. Most combat operations were wrapping up. We were mostly doing security sweeps. Nothing memorable. Except there was an incident. A village we secured, supposed to be friendly. Intelligence said Viet Cong were using it as a supply cache. We went in heavy, cleared it house by house. Find anything? No VC, no weapons. Just villagers who seemed terrified of us. Castellano ordered us to search anyway, tore the place apart. I objected, said we were wasting time and alienating potential allies. How'd he take that? Not well. Told me to follow orders or face court-martial. So I followed orders. We found the cache 2 days later, completely different village. Castellano took credit for the operation. Got commended. I got reassigned. You think he held a grudge? Tank, I was a 20-year-old lieutenant questioning his authority in front of enlisted men. In his world, that was unforgivable. And men like Castellano don't forget slights. So 15 years ago, when you're FBI investigating trafficking and you start getting close to his operation, he recognizes your name, realizes you're that punk lieutenant who questioned him in Vietnam, decides to send you a very personal message by taking Sarah. The pieces fit, but the picture they made was uglier than Kane wanted to admit. A vendetta spanning 40 years, targeting an innocent girl because her father had once questioned authority, destroying a family to settle a score that never should have mattered. His phone rang again. Unknown number. He answered cautiously. A woman's voice, young, scared. Mr. Bishop, this is Elena Hayes from the diner. Elena, are you all right? No, I'm not. Someone's been following me. Black SUV, same as the one Victor Cross was driving. It's been outside my trailer for the last hour. Where are you now? Inside, doors locked. I called the police, but they said without a direct threat, there's nothing they can do. Give me your address. I'm coming. She rattled off directions to a trailer park on the edge of town. Kane was already moving, grabbing his jacket, signaling to Tank. Boss, Elena Hayes is being surveilled. Possible threat from Victor's associates. I'm going to extract her. Want backup? No, you hold the fort here. If this goes sideways, someone needs to coordinate. Tank didn't like it, but he understood. Chain of command meant sometimes you went alone. Kane took his Harley because speed mattered more than stealth. The trailer park was 15 minutes out, a collection of weathered mobile homes where people who couldn't afford better tried to maintain dignity on poverty wages. He found Elena's address and spotted the SUV immediately, parked 3 spaces down, windows tinted, engine idling. He pulled up directly in front of Elena's trailer, killed the engine, and walked to her door. She opened it immediately, face pale. Pack a bag. Essentials only. You're coming with me. For how long? Until we know it's safe. Move. She disappeared into the bedroom while Kane stood in the doorway, positioning himself where he could watch the SUV. The windows were too dark to see who was inside, but he counted at least two figures. Professional surveillance, not some amateur operation. Elena emerged with a backpack. Ready. Stay behind me. When we get to my bike, you get on immediately. No hesitation. Okay. They walked out together. Kane kept his body between Elena and the SUV, his right hand near the K-bar he still carried out of habit. The SUV's engine revved once, a warning or a promise, but nobody got out. Elena climbed on the Harley, wrapped her arms around Kane's waist. He fired the engine and pulled out, watching the mirrors. The SUV followed, maintaining distance, not trying to close or intercept. They wanted Elena scared, not dead, at least not yet. Kane led them on a route designed to confirm pursuit. Highway north, then sudden turn onto a side road, then another turn onto a dirt path that led into state forest land. The SUV stayed with them through every turn, confirming this was deliberate surveillance. Finally, Kane stopped at a clearing he knew well, a place where Ride Safe sometimes trained. He killed the engine and helped Elena off the bike. Why are we stopping? Because I'm tired of running from people who need to learn some manners. The SUV pulled into the clearing, stopped 20 yards away. Doors opened. Two men got out, both wearing dark suits, both moving with the controlled precision of trained operators. One was older, maybe 50, the other younger, early 30s. Neither drew weapons, but both kept hands visible and ready. The older one spoke first. Mr. Bishop, we're not here for trouble. Then why are you following Miss Hayes? We're following you. She's just a person of interest. Kane positioned himself between the men and Elena. In what capacity? The younger one answered, We represent certain parties who are concerned about recent developments regarding Victor Cross. We understand you spoke with him this morning. I helped apprehend a kidnapper. If you've got a problem with that, talk to the sheriff. The older man smiled without humor. Sheriff Morgan is way out of her depth on this one. Victor Cross is part of something much larger than local law enforcement can handle. FBI? The man's smile widened slightly. We're not FBI. We're private contractors hired to ensure certain operations continue without interruption. Victor's escape was necessary to prevent him from compromising those operations. So you broke him out. We facilitated his extraction. He's currently being debriefed to determine how much damage his capture caused to network security. Kane's mind raced. Private contractors meant someone with serious money was involved. Contractors didn't come cheap, and the kind who could orchestrate a prison break in broad daylight definitely didn't come cheap. What does this have to do with Elena? The younger contractor pulled out a tablet, showed surveillance footage. Elena at the diner writing the help note. Elena passing it to Big Jim. The whole sequence captured in high definition. Your waitress friend interfered with a sanctioned operation. Her actions resulted in significant complications. Sanctioned by who? That's above your clearance level. What you need to understand is this. People who interfere with our operations tend to have unfortunate accidents. We're here as a courtesy to suggest that Miss Hayes might want to reconsider her civic-mindedness. That's a threat. That's friendly advice. You're a veteran. You understand how these things work. Sometimes the mission requires unpleasant necessities. Kane's hand moved closer to the K-bar. Elena behind him tensed, ready to run. The two contractors noticed, adjusted their stances slightly. Here's my friendly advice, Kane said quietly. You and your employer made a mistake coming after civilians. Made a bigger mistake threatening someone under my protection. And you're making the biggest mistake of all by standing here instead of getting back in your vehicle and leaving. The older contractor's expression hardened. You're a 62-year-old man with PTSD and a drinking problem. We're trained professionals. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I haven't had a drink in 30 years. The PTSD just makes me more dangerous. Ask the 4 men I killed in Vietnam after they ambushed my patrol and left me for dead. That was 40 years ago. Muscle memory lasts forever. The contractors exchanged glances, recalculating. They'd expected an old man who'd fold under pressure. Instead, they'd found someone who'd survived worse threats from more dangerous enemies. Walk away, Kane continued. Tell your employer that RideSafe is now actively investigating his operation. Tell him we're coming. And tell him that if anything happens to Elena Hayes or Sophie Marshall or anyone else connected to this case, I will personally burn his entire organization to the ground. Big words from someone with no authority. I had authority when I was FBI. It didn't help. So now I operate without authority, which means I don't have to follow rules that protect people like you. The standoff stretched for 10 seconds that felt like 10 minutes. Finally, the older contractor nodded to his partner. They backed toward their SUV, still watching, still professional. This isn't over, the older one said. I'm counting on it. The SUV pulled out, disappearing down the dirt road in a cloud of dust. Kane waited until the sound of the engine faded completely before relaxing his stance. Elena stepped out from behind him, shaking. Who were those men? Proof that we're on to something big. Come on, we need to get you somewhere safe. They rode back to the compound in silence. Elena held on tight, processing everything she'd just witnessed. When they arrived, Tank met them at the door, took one look at Kane's face, and knew something significant had happened. Inside, Kane assembled the team and laid out the new development. Private contractors working for someone with resources. Contractors who admitted to breaking Victor out. Contractors who knew about Elena's involvement and were willing to threaten civilians. They're getting desperate, Shadow observed. Desperate enough to show their hand, which means we're close to something they want protected, Crow added. Miguel looked up from his computer. Boss, I've been digging into Richard Castellanos' background. Found something interesting. In 1975, right when Saigon fell, he filed paperwork to adopt a minor. Vietnamese kid, 17 years old, listed as orphan refugee. Let me guess, Kane said. The kid's name was Victor Cross. Miguel nodded. Victor Nguyen Cross. Castellanos sponsored his immigration, gave him American citizenship, paid for his education. CIA recruited him in 1982 when he turned 18. So Castellanos been running Victor for 40 years, Tank said. Recruited him in Vietnam, brought him to the States, got him into intelligence work. That's a long-term investment. It's more than that, Preacher said quietly. It's grooming, taking a vulnerable kid, giving him everything, creating absolute loyalty. Victor doesn't just work for Castellano. He probably sees him as a father figure. Which makes the immunity offer even more complicated, Doc added. If Victor was willing to betray Castellano, something serious must have fractured their relationship. But if he wasn't willing and the escape was planned, then we were being played from the start, Kane finished. Victor gets captured, makes big promises about cooperation, strings us along while his extraction team gets in position. Meanwhile, we're focused on him instead of the actual operation. So what's the actual operation? Elena asked. Everyone turned to look at her, and she flushed, but continued. I mean, this can't just be about trafficking. The resources involved, the coordination, the power to kill FBI investigations. What are they really doing? Kane walked to the wall map and stared at it like the answer might reveal itself through sheer force of will. Victor mentioned shipments. Sophie mentioned facilities. The contractors talked about sanctioned operations. This isn't just sex trafficking. It's bigger. Human trafficking is just one revenue stream, Shadow said. These operations typically bundle narcotics, weapons, money laundering. It's all connected, and it all requires infrastructure, Miguel added. Ports, border crossings, corrupt officials, transport networks. You can't run something this sophisticated without serious institutional support. The phone rang. Rita Morgan again. Kane put it on speaker. Rita. Kane, I've got something. The ambush on Victor's transport, one of the guards survived long enough to give a description. 4 men, military training, extracted Victor and disappeared in a helicopter. Coast Guard tracked it heading southeast. Lost radar contact over international waters. Southeast toward? Caribbean. Maybe Cuba. Maybe further south. Costa Rica, Kane said. Richard Castellanos' estate. How did you... We've been investigating. Rita, I need you to do something for me. Run a background check on private military contractors operating in North Carolina. Recent activity, anyone connected to Castellano. Kane, I can't just... Two guards are dead. The people who killed them threatened a civilian witness today. This is active investigation territory. Silence while she processed. Then, I'll see what I can find. But Kane, you need to be careful. If you're right about Castellano having power to kill FBI cases, he might have people in my department too. Assume he does. Trust nobody you haven't bled with. That's a short list. Welcome to my world. He hung up and turned to find the team watching him, waiting for orders. These were men who'd followed him through firefights and ambush and desperate situations where survival was never guaranteed. They were ready to follow him again into whatever hell this investigation led. We need to make a decision, Kane said. Right now, this is still technically legal. We're gathering information, connecting dots, working within the system. But if we keep pushing, if we go after Castellano directly, we cross a line. We become vigilantes, fugitives, everything we swore not to be when we took our oaths. Preacher spoke first. I stopped believing in the system 30 years ago when I watched it abandon men who'd sacrificed everything. If the law won't touch Castellano because he's protected, then the law is broken. We're not assassins, Doc said. But we're not helpless either. There's got to be a middle path. We gather evidence, Shadow suggested. Solid, undeniable evidence. Then we force the system to act by making it public. Media, whistleblower organizations, whatever it takes. And if Castellano runs before we can act, Crow asked, if he disappears to Costa Rica or somewhere without extradition, then we go get him, Tank said simply. Same as we'd extract any other asset from hostile territory. That's kidnapping. That's a citizen's arrest on foreign soil. Semantics. Kane listened to the debate, measuring his team's willingness against the risks involved. Finally, he raised a hand for silence. Here's what we're going to do. Miguel, you and Shadow continue investigating Castellano. Financial records, property holdings, travel patterns, associates. Build a case file that could stand up in court. Shadow your intelligence contacts. Do any of them have assets in Costa Rica? Two that I know of. Former agency guys who retired down there. See if they can do surveillance on Castellano's estate. I want to know if he's there, how many people he's got, security setup. That'll take time. We've got time. Victor's escape bought us a window. Castellano thinks we're chasing ghosts while he's sitting safely offshore. And if he comes back to the States, then we grab him. Clean, legal, citizen's arrest with evidence to back it up. Doc raised a hand. What about Sophie Marshall? She's still in danger as a witness. Doc, you coordinate her protection. Use our safe house, rotate guards, keep her location secret even from law enforcement. The old medic nodded. I'll move her tonight. Elena. Kane turned to the young waitress. I know you didn't sign up for any of this. If you want to walk away right now, nobody would blame you. She met his eyes with surprising steel. Jessica Chen has been missing 5 years because I didn't act. I'm not making that mistake again. What do you need me to do? You're good at noticing details, at reading people. I want you working with Preacher, contacting families of missing persons, seeing if any cases connect to Castellano's network. I can do that. Preacher, you'll train her on interview techniques and how to spot patterns. The old chaplain nodded. Happy to have the help. Tank, you're with me. We need to talk to someone who was actually in Saigon during the fall. Who? General Mackenzie. He commanded MAV logistics during the evacuation. If anyone knows what Castellano was really doing in those final days, it's him. Tank's eyebrows rose. The general's got to be, what, 90? 87? Lives in a retirement home in Asheville. I called him on his birthday last month. Think he'll remember Castellano? The general remembers everything. It's a blessing and a curse. The team dispersed to their assignments. Elena followed Preacher to the file room where decades of missing persons cases waited to be cross-referenced. Doc made calls arranging Sophie's transport to a safe house in the mountains. Shadow and Miguel huddled over computers building the case against Richard Castellano. Kane found himself alone in his office, staring at the photo of Sarah. 15 years of searching, and for the first time he had a real lead. Not just a suspect or a theory, but actual names, connections. Evidence. But evidence meant nothing if Sarah was already dead. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Against every security protocol, he opened it. A photo loaded. His breath caught. Sarah, or someone who looked exactly like her. Older, harder, standing in what appeared to be a factory. The timestamp showed 3 months ago. Below the photo, a message. She's alive. For now, stop investigating or she dies. You have 48 hours. Kane's hand shook, this time not from PTSD, but from rage so pure it felt like napalm in his veins. They had her. They'd had her for 15 years. And now they were using her as leverage, as bait, as a weapon against him. The phone rang immediately, same unknown number. Kane answered. A electronically distorted voice spoke. Bishop, did you receive our message? I got it. Your daughter is currently at a facility in Southeast Asia. She's been there since 2011. She's alive, reasonably healthy, and will remain so as long as you follow instructions. Put her on the phone. She doesn't have phone access, but I can arrange proof of life. Have you ever heard her voice say? Silence, then rustling, then another voice, female, cautious. Dad, if this is really you, please stop looking. They'll kill me. They've killed others for less. Just stop. Sarah's voice. Older, worn, but unmistakably his daughter. The distorted voice returned. Satisfied? Now here are your instructions. Cease all investigation into our operations. Disband Ride Safe. Destroy any evidence you've gathered. Do this and your daughter lives out her life in relative comfort. Refuse, and we'll send you pieces of her until you complete them. Kane's response was automatic, tactical, buying time. I need more than 48 hours. Dismantling Ride Safe, destroying evidence, that takes coordination. You have 72 hours. That's generous considering you should have stopped 15 years ago. And how do I know you'll keep your word? That Sarah won't just disappear anyway? You don't. But you know for certain what happens if you refuse. Your choice, Marine. Save your daughter or save strangers. You can't do both. The line went dead. Kane sat in darkness, phone still pressed to his ear, listening to silence. The ultimatum was clear. The choice impossible. Everything he'd built with Ride Safe, everyone they'd saved, all the good they'd done versus his daughter's life. Semper Fidelis, always faithful. But faithful to what? The mission? Or family? Tank appeared in the doorway. Boss, you look like you've seen a ghost. Kane handed him the phone, showed him the photo and the text. Tank read it, face hardening with each word. They're bluffing? Maybe. But that voice, that was Sarah. I'd know her voice anywhere. Could be AI. Deepfake. They had 15 years to record her, manipulate the audio, or she's actually alive and they're holding her hostage. Either way, we can't let them dictate terms. We fold now, they win. And what's to stop them from killing Sarah anyway once you're not a threat? Nothing. But what's the alternative? Keep investigating and guarantee they kill her? We call their bluff. Move faster. Hit harder. Give them no time to react. That's a hell of a gamble with my daughter's life. Tank met his eyes with the unflinching honesty of a brother who'd earned the right to brutal truth. Sarah's been gone 15 years. In that time, we've saved 47 people. If we stop now, how many more victims? 50? 100? At some point, you have to ask what Sarah would want. Kane's voice came out raw. Don't put that on me. I'm not. I'm asking what kind of man you want to be. The father who saves one daughter, or the Marine who saves as many as possible? Both. I want to be both. Then we find a way to do both. We don't fold, we don't stop, but we move smart and we move fast. 72 hours? We can do a lot in 72 hours. Kane looked at the photo of Sarah again. 31 years old now. Wow. According to the message, held captive in Southeast Asia, probably Cambodia or Vietnam, places where American law couldn't touch her. Get everyone back in here, Kane said. Plans have changed. The team reassembled within minutes. Kane showed them the photo and the message. Silence fell like a shroud. This changes everything, Doc said quietly. No, Kane replied. This accelerates everything. They're threatening Sarah because we're getting close. They wouldn't bother with leverage if they weren't scared. 72 hours, Miguel said. That's not much time. It's enough. Shadow, I need surveillance on Castellanos' Costa Rica estate within 24 hours. I'll make the calls. Miguel, deep dive on recent trafficking cases in Southeast Asia. Look for facilities that might be holding American citizens. Focus on Cambodia, Vietnam, Thailand. On it. Doc, move Sophie Marshall tonight. They know she's in protective custody. They'll assume she's leveraged too. Already arranged. She moves in 2 hours. Kane turned to Tank. Old friend, I need you to make a call I can't make. General Mackenzie, explain the situation. Ask him about Castellano's operations in Saigon, specifically the last days before the fall. You sure you want me doing that instead of you? If this goes bad, if Castellano's people come after Ride Safe leadership, I don't want you directly connected to the investigation. You're my insurance policy. If I go down, you keep the mission going. Tank's jaw worked, emotion barely contained. Brother, you're not going down. Hope for the best. Plan for the worst. Crow stood. What about the rest of us? What do you need? Crow, prep our extraction protocols. If we locate Sarah, we might need rapid deployment to Southeast Asia. You're talking about a combat operation on foreign soil. I'm talking about getting my daughter back. Whatever it takes, Preacher raised a hand. What about Elena? She's civilian, not trained for this. Elena stays here, Kane said. She works the databases, makes phone calls, stays safe. This gets kinetic. I don't want her anywhere near it. The young woman started to protest, but Preacher put a gentle hand on her shoulder. Let the old warriors do the warrior things. You're valuable exactly where you are. Kane stood at the head of the table, looking at men who'd become family, who'd stand with him even when standing meant falling. This is it. This is what we've been building toward for 15 years. Castellano thinks he's got leverage, thinks he can threaten us into submission. But he forgot one thing about Marines. What's that? Elena asked. We don't surrender, we don't quit, and we sure as hell don't leave our people behind. Semper Fi, Tank rumbled. The rest echoed it. The old motto binding them across decades and distance and all the darkness they'd survived. The clock started at 0 hour when Kane showed the team that photograph. 72 hours to dismantle everything or watch his daughter die in pieces halfway around the world. The countdown wasn't just numbers anymore. It was Sarah's heartbeat, measured in seconds she might not have. Miguel worked through the night, 3 monitors, ours glowing in the darkness of the compound's tech room. His fingers moved across keyboards with the kind of speed that came from spending more time with machines than people. Facial recognition software churned through databases, searching for any trace of the woman in that photograph. The facility behind her looked industrial, rows of sewing machines visible in the background. Fluorescent lighting that matched 100 sweatshops across Southeast Asia. Kane stood behind him, coffee going cold in his hand, watching algorithms process what human eyes couldn't catch. Somewhere in the metadata, in the pixels and shadows, might be a location. A clue. Anything. Got something, Miguel said, voice rough from lack of sleep. The photo was taken with a smartphone, recent model. GPS data was stripped, but I recovered fragments from the file structure. Coordinates put it within 50 kilometers of Phnom Penh, Cambodia. That's still a big search area, not if we cross-reference with known trafficking facilities in the region. Miguel pulled up a map overlaid with red dots marking suspected operations. NGO reports, Interpol databases, intelligence from Shadow's contacts. 3 facilities in that radius fit the profile. Garment factories, all of them. Legal fronts for illegal labor. How do we narrow it down? We don't. Not from here. We'd need boots on ground, actual reconnaissance. Then that's what we do. Boss, we're talking about Cambodia. We have no jurisdiction, no support, no extraction plan if things go sideways. Kane's voice came out flat, final. My daughter is in one of those 3 buildings. I'm going to get her. Everything else is just logistics. The door opened and Tank entered, carrying a laptop and the weight of bad news on his face. Talk to General Mackenzie. He remembers Castellano, remembers him well. And Castellano ran the Black Market in Saigon from 72 through 75. Heroin, weapons, stolen supplies, you name it. The general knew but couldn't prove it, and by the time anyone cared enough to investigate, Saigon fell and everyone had bigger problems. Did the general know about Victor Cross? New Castellano brought back a Vietnamese kid, claimed he was orphan refugee. The general thought it was suspicious, but the chaos of the evacuation meant a lot of suspicious things got overlooked. By the time things settled, Castellano was stateside, and the kid had disappeared into the system. So we were right. Castellano's been running this network for 50 years. Tank pulled up files on the laptop. Gets worse. The general made some calls to old contacts still active in intelligence. Castellano's name came up in 3 separate classified investigations over the last 30 years. Trafficking, weapons smuggling, political corruption. Every single investigation got shut down before charges could be filed. Let me guess. Orders from above. Way above. We're talking people who can make federal prosecutors and FBI directors back off with a phone call. Kane felt the weight of it settling into his bones. Heavier than ruck marches through the jungle. Heavier than carrying wounded Marines to medevac zones. They weren't just fighting one man. They were fighting a system designed to protect men like Castellano, a system that valued power and money over justice and lives. The general sent anything useful? He sent this. Tank turned the laptop around. Surveillance photo from 1974, grainy black and white, showing a younger Castellano standing with 3 other men in military uniforms. Look at the guy on the left. Kane leaned in, studying the face. Something familiar in the features, the way he carried himself. Who is it? Deputy Director Michael Thornton. Back when he was a captain running counterintelligence in Saigon. The same Thornton who'd ordered Kane's investigation closed in 2005. The same Thornton who was now Deputy Director of the FBI. The connections ran deeper than Kane had imagined, roots that went back to Vietnam and spread through every level of American law enforcement. They've been protecting each other for 40 years, Tank said quietly, and they've been protected by the same system we swore oaths to defend. So what do? We can't fight the entire FBI. We don't fight them, we go around them. Dawn broke over the mountains, painting the compound in shades of gold that reminded Kane too much of muzzle flashes in burning villages. He stood on the porch with his second cup of coffee, watching the sun climb, counting down the hours. 68 left. 68 hours to find his daughter and stop a network that had survived half a century of investigation. Doc found him there, medical bag slung over one shoulder, heading out to move Sophie Marshall to the safe house. The old corpsman paused, studied Kane's profile with eyes that had seen too many men crack under pressure. You sleeping? Some. Bullshit. I can prescribe something if you need it. I need my daughter back. Can you prescribe that? Doc sat down on the porch railing, groaning as old joints protested. In Vietnam, when we were pinned down and the situation looked hopeless, you know what kept us alive? Not training, not weapons. The absolute certainty that we'd get out together or die together. No other options. Where are you going with this, Doc? You're carrying this alone, Sam, thinking it's your burden, your failure, your responsibility. But that girl in the photo, she's family to all of us. You don't have to carry this alone. Something in Kane's chest loosened, just slightly, just enough to let him breathe. I keep thinking about all the times I missed. School plays, birthdays, the day she learned to drive. I was always chasing the next case, the next mission. And now I've got one more mission, maybe the last one that really matters. And I don't know if I'm still good enough. You're 62, not dead. And you've got a team of old bastards who are still good enough. Trust us. The moment shattered as headlights swept across the compound. 3 vehicles moving fast, tactical formation. Kane's hand went to the K-bar on his belt before his brain processed what his eyes were seeing. Federal plates, FBI. Doc was already moving, quick despite his age, disappearing into the building to alert the others. Kane stayed on the porch, standing tall, projecting calm he didn't feel. If they'd come to arrest him, running would only make it worse. 6 SUVs skidded to stops in the gravel lot. Doors opened and agents poured out. 20 of them, vests and rifles, moving with the precision of a team that had done this before. Leading them was Deputy Director Michael Thornton himself, older now than in that Vietnam photo, but still carrying authority like a weapon. Kane Bishop. Thornton's voice cut across the morning air. You're under investigation for interfering with a federal witness, threatening a suspect in custody, and planning unauthorized paramilitary operations on foreign soil. That's a lot of big accusations, Michael. I have warrants. Search warrant for these premises. Arrest warrant for you. The compound doors opened and Kane's team emerged, moving into defensive positions without appearing to. Tank to the left, Shadow to the right, Crow near the vehicles. No weapons drawn but hands ready, bodies positioned to respond. Old soldiers reading the terrain, calculating angles, preparing for whatever came next. You really want to do this? Kane asked quietly. Come into my home with guns and accusations? I'm doing my job. Your job is protecting traffickers? Because that's what you've been doing since Saigon. Thornton's mask slipped for just a second, surprise and anger flashing across his face before discipline reasserted control. Careful, Bishop. Slander won't help your situation. Not slander if it's true. You and Castellano, running operations together since Vietnam. How much did he pay you to kill my investigation in 2005? The FBI agents were looking at their boss now, uncertainty creeping into their tactical readiness. Nobody liked internal corruption, and Thornton's reaction was telling. Too defensive, too angry for a man with nothing to hide. Last chance, Thornton said. Come quietly or we use force. Before Kane could respond, Sheriff Rita Morgan's cruiser pulled in, lights flashing, engine growling as she positioned her vehicle between the FBI and the compound. She stepped out, hand resting casually on her service weapon, projecting authority that came from 20 years of dealing with armed situations. Deputy Director Thornton, Rita called out, I need to speak with you about that arrest warrant. Sheriff Morgan, this is federal business. It's local business when the warrant affidavit contains false information. Judge Harrison wants to see you regarding irregularities in your probable cause declaration. What irregularities? The part where you claimed Bishop threatened Victor Cross during custodial interrogation. I have security footage showing their conversation was consensual and brief. The part where you claim Bishop was planning operations on foreign soil. I have no evidence of that, and the part where you failed to disclose your personal history with Richard Castellano. The compound went silent. Even the morning birds seemed to stop singing. Thornton's face had gone pale, jaw working as he calculated his next move. Judge Harrison is Vietnam veteran herself, Rita continued. JAG Corps. She remembers Castellano. And she's very interested in why an FBI deputy director would rush to protect someone connected to historical trafficking investigations. Thornton knew he was trapped. Push the arrest and face judicial scrutiny. Back down and admit the warrant was bogus. Either way, his play had failed. This isn't over, Bishop. Thornton's voice carried the edge of desperation. Whatever you think you know, you can't prove any of it. Not yet, but I've got 68 hours to work on it. The FBI convoy pulled out, leaving dust and defeat hanging in the morning air. Kane watched them go, knowing he'd bought time but made a dangerous enemy. Thornton wouldn't stop. Men like that never stopped. They just regrouped and came back harder. Rita approached the porch, exhaustion written in every line of her face. That warrant was garbage, but I can't hold off federal pressure forever. You've got maybe 48 hours before they come back with something that'll stick. Then I better work fast. What are you planning, Kane? Better you don't know. Plausible deniability. She studied him, reading the determination and the desperation underneath. Whatever you're planning, be smart. Don't give them legitimate reasons to lock you up. No promises. Rita left and the team gathered in the conference room, tension thick enough to choke on. They dodged the FBI for now, but everyone knew the clock was ticking in multiple directions. 72 hours until Castellano's deadline. 48 hours until Thornton returned with better warrants. Time collapsing from all sides. Shadow's phone rang. He listened for 30 seconds, expression darkening, then hung up. We have a problem. Sophie Marshall's sister Maya was taken an hour ago, forced into a van outside her Charlotte apartment. 2 men, professionals. The room erupted in angry voices, but Kane's mind had already shifted into tactical mode, processing the new data, adjusting the plan. Castellano was consolidating, tying up loose ends, securing leverage. Maya Marshall was bait, a way to ensure Sophie didn't testify, a way to keep pressure on anyone who might interfere. Doc pulled out his phone. I'll call Sophie, let her know. No. Kane's command cut through the noise. We don't tell her yet. Boss, that's her sister. And if we tell her, she'll do something stupid trying to save Maya. We need Sophie focused on staying safe and helping us build the case. Once we have Maya's location, then we move. That's cold, Preacher said, disapproval heavy in his voice. That's tactical. We save them both, or we risk losing them both. Miguel's fingers flew across his keyboard. I'm pulling traffic camera footage from Charlotte. If we can ID the van, track its route, maybe we find where they're holding her. How long? Give me 2 hours. You've got one. Kane turned to Tank. We need to accelerate the Costa Rica surveillance. I want eyes on Castellano's compound within 24 hours. Already arranged. Shadow's contact is moving into position tonight. We'll have real-time intelligence by tomorrow morning. Crow raised a hand. What are you about the Southeast Asia angle? If Sarah's in Cambodia and Maya's being held somewhere in North Carolina, we can't be in both places at once. Then we split the team. Tank leads the domestic operation. I take Southeast Asia. Like hell you do, Tank growled. You're not going alone into a foreign country with no backup. I'm not asking permission, Gunny, and I'm not letting my lieutenant walk into an ambush without proper support. We go together or we don't go. The old argument, dating back to Vietnam, the eternal tension between Kane's leadership and Tank's loyalty. Neither would back down because backing down meant abandoning principles they'd carried for 4 decades. Preacher broke the stalemate. What if we do both? Small team to Cambodia for reconnaissance and extraction. Rest stays stateside handling Maya's rescue and building the case against Castellano. We coordinate across time zones, share intelligence, work as one unit in 2 locations. It was the reasonable solution, the one that balanced risk and resources. Kane nodded slowly. All right, I take Doc and Shadow to Cambodia. Tank, you coordinate domestic operations with Crow, Preacher, and Miguel. Elena stood from where she'd been quietly observing. What about me? You stay here. Continue working missing persons databases, cross-referencing cases that might connect to Castellano's network. That's crucial work. I can do more than data entry. Kane's voice softened but remained firm. You saved Sophie Marshall's life with that napkin. You've already done more than most people would. But where we're going, what we're doing, requires experience you don't have. I need you safe in working the intelligence angle. She wanted to argue, but something in his tone told her this wasn't negotiable. Fine, but when this is over, you teach me. Combat skills, tactical thinking, everything I need to be more than just the person who notices things. Deal. Miguel looked up from his screen. Got the van, 2019 Ford Transit, white, tracked it south on I-77 before it switched plates and disappeared near the South Carolina border. But I pulled cell tower data from the vicinity. 3 phones in that area pinged towers in a pattern suggesting they were traveling together with the van. Can you track them? Working on it. The phones are burners, but they're still transmitting. Should have a location within the hour. The pieces were moving, the operation taking shape despite the K and pressure. Kane felt the familiar sensation from Vietnam, the way everything focused down to mission parameters and objective priorities when the situation got critical. Fear and doubt became background noise. All that mattered was the next step, the next decision, the next move that might keep everyone alive. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He stepped into his office and answered. Bishop, Victor Cross's voice, unmistakable despite the electronic distortion. You've been busy. FBI raids, sheriff's interventions, very dramatic. What do you want, Victor? To offer friendly advice. Castellano knows you're not backing down. He's accelerating his timeline. The shipment moves tonight instead of waiting out your 72 hours. What shipment? The one that includes your daughter. He's consolidating assets, moving high-value targets to more secure facilities. If you want to find Sarah, you need to move now. Why are you telling me this? Because fuck the colonel. He promised me protection, then tried to kill me during that transport. The ambush? That was his cleanup crew. They were supposed to extract me and execute me. I survived by pretending to go along. You expect me to believe you've had a change of heart? I expect you to understand that my enemy's enemy is useful. I don't care about redemption or justice. I care about staying alive. Helping you hurts Castellano, which helps me. What do you want in return? Immunity still, and protection from Castellano's reach. But I'll give you something first as good faith. Maya Marshall is being held at a warehouse in Spartanburg, South Carolina, 4111 Industrial Parkway. 6 guards, rotating shifts. They're using her as leverage to keep Sophie quiet. How do I know this isn't a trap? You don't. But that warehouse address is real. The guards are real, and Maya Marshall is really there. Check it out. If I'm lying, you've lost nothing but time you can't afford to waste. The line went dead. Kane stared at his phone, weighing possibilities. Victor could be playing him, feeding false information to waste resources. Or Victor could be genuine, looking for survival in a world where his former allies wanted him dead. Either way, they couldn't ignore the lead. He returned to the conference room and relayed the information. Tank's skepticism was immediate. It's a trap. Has to be. Maybe. But if Maya Marshall is actually there, we can't leave her. Shadow pulled up satellite imagery of the address. Warehouse district, mostly abandoned, perfect for keeping someone hidden. Ingress and egress routes look manageable. If it is a trap, we'd see it coming. Crow studied the layout. We could do this. 4-man team, 2 entry points, coordinated assault. In and out in 10 minutes. Or we walk into an ambush and lose half the team, Doc countered. Kane made the call. We send a reconnaissance team. Eyes only, no engagement. Confirm Maya's presence. Assess guard strength. Identify traps. If it checks out, we plan a rescue. If it's bogus, we pull back and find another angle. Who goes on recon? Shadow and Crow. You're the quietest and the most experienced at this. Get in, get eyes on, get out. No heroics. The 2 men nodded, already mentally preparing. They'd done this before, hundreds of times in Vietnam and dozens more in the decades since. Reconnaissance was about patience and discipline, qualities both had in abundance despite their age. They left within the hour, 2 old soldiers heading into potential danger with the calm competence of men who'd long ago accepted that death was always one mistake away. The rest of the team settled into the waiting game, monitoring communications, reviewing intelligence, preparing for multiple scenarios. Elena worked her databases, cross-referencing missing persons with locations connected to Castellano's known properties. Preacher made calls to victim advocacy groups, gathering information about recent trafficking patterns. Miguel continued tracking the burner phones and analyzing that photograph of Sarah. Kane found himself back in his office, staring at his daughter's face in that image. 31 years old, wearing factory worker clothes, standing in a place he couldn't reach yet. The countdown continued. 58 hours left. 58 hours to find her, rescue her, and dismantle the network that had stolen 15 years of her life. Tank appeared in the doorway. Boss, you need to see this. They gathered around Miguel's primary monitor. He'd enhanced the photograph of Sarah, isolating the background, sharpening details that were barely visible in the original image. One of those details was a calendar on the wall behind her, partially visible but readable with enhancement. The calendar showed November, last year, which meant the photo was recent, current, proof that Sarah had been alive 3 months ago. But there was more. Miguel zoomed in on a reflection in a window, something caught in the glass that the photographer hadn't noticed. A sign written in Khmer script. He ran it through translation software. Golden Lotus Garment Factory, Miguel read. And I found it. Phnom Penh, Cambodia. Exactly where the GPS fragments suggested. We have a location, Tank breathed. We have a target. Kane felt the pieces clicking into place, the mission parameters solidifying. Shadow makes contact with his Cambodia asset tonight, gets surveillance on the factory by tomorrow. We fly out tomorrow night, hit the facility the following morning. That's cutting it close to Castellano's deadline. Then we move faster. Doc, coordinate with Rita about protection for Sophie while we're overseas. Tank, you're mission commander for domestic operations. Anything happens stateside, you handle it. Understood. The radio crackled. Shadow's voice, calm and professional. Recon complete. We have visual confirmation. Maya Marshall is on site, 2nd floor, northwestern corner room. 6 guards confirmed, light arms, relaxed posture. No indication of trap. Recommend immediate extraction before they relocate her. Kane checked his watch. 4 hours until full dark, optimal time for assault. Copy that, extract and return to compound. We're green-lighting the rescue operation. Understand, shadow out. The team moved into high gear, pulling weapons from the secure locker, checking body armor, loading magazines. This was familiar territory, the controlled chaos of pre-mission preparation. Doc prepped medical supplies for casualties. Preacher loaded communications gear. Miguel programmed tablets with building schematics and real-time satellite feeds. Tank pulled Kane aside one more time. You sure about this? We hit that warehouse. We're committing. No going back. We committed the day they took Sarah. Everything since has just been working up the courage to finish it. All right then. Let's go get Maya Marshall. They loaded into 2 vehicles, blacked out and unmarked. Kane drove the lead truck with Tank riding shotgun, Doc and Preacher in the back. Shadow and Crow followed in the second vehicle with equipment. The drive to Spartanburg took 90 minutes through mountain roads that twisted like old memories, past small towns that looked like they'd been frozen in 1955. Kane's mind was already in Cambodia, already planning the assault on that garment factory, already seeing Sarah's face when he found her. But first this. First Maya Marshall, Sophie's sister, Tommy Marshall's other daughter. First the promise to a dead Marine who'd taken bullets meant for Kane 44 years ago. The warehouse district appeared ahead, a collection of rusting metal buildings under sodium lights that turned everything orange and sickly. Shadow guided them to a staging point 3 blocks from the target, an abandoned gas station with sightlines to the approach. They geared up in silence, checking weapons and comms, falling into the familiar rhythm of men who'd done this before. Kane felt his hands steady as he loaded his sidearm, the tremor disappearing when purpose replaced fear. This was what he was made for. This was who he had always been, under the years and the pain and the guilt. Final radio check, Kane said quietly. The team responded in sequence, confirming communications worked. Shadow, you and Crow take the east entrance. Tank and Doc, west. Preacher stays with the vehicles, ready for emergency extract. I go in through the roof access, come down from above. Just like Hugh, Tank muttered, referencing an operation from Vietnam that Kane barely remembered through the haze of violence and fear. Just like Hugh, they moved out at 2200 hours, shadows among shadows, old men who still knew how to be warriors when the mission required it. Kane reached the building first, found the rusted fire escape, climbed 3 stories with knees that screamed protest but held anyway. The roof access was locked but not reinforced. Crow had given him a pry bar. He forced the door, wincing at the metallic screech, and descended into darkness that smelled like old oil and rat droppings. Second floor, northwestern corner. 6 guards, probably 2 on each floor, 2 mobile. Kane's tactical brain processed the variables, calculating approach angles and lines of fire. His radio earpiece carried quiet updates as the team moved into position. Shadow, east entrance secured, 1 guard neutralized, non-lethal. Tank, west entrance compromised. Guard saw us, taking him now. The sound of a brief scuffle, then Tank again. Secured, moving to stairwell. Kane descended to the second floor, found a hallway lined with doors. Most were locked or empty. One showed light under the crack, voices inside. He moved closer, pressed against the wall, listening. 2 men talking in low tones, discussing shift rotation and how much longer they'd have to babysit the girl. Professional security, not enthusiastic about their assignment, but committed to seeing it through. Kane marked their position, continued down the hall. The northwestern corner room had a guard outside. Young guy, maybe 30, checking his phone with the bored expression of someone pulling an uneventful shift. He never saw Kane coming. 1 hand over the mouth, other arm around the throat, applying pressure to the carotid until consciousness faded. Kane lowered him quietly to the floor, zip-tied his hands, gagged him. The door was locked. Kane knocked softly, voice pitched low. Maya Marshall, your sister sent me. I'm here to extract you. Silence, then a young woman's voice, scared and suspicious. How do I know you're telling the truth? Sophie said to tell you about the time you both got caught shoplifting makeup when you were 13. Your mom made you volunteer at a women's shelter as punishment. More silence. The story was from Sophie's initial interview, a detail she'd shared to help establish her credibility. Kane heard movement, locks turning, and the door opened a crack. Maya Marshall looked like her sister, same dark hair and determined chin, but younger and more terrified. She stared at Kane, this 62-year-old man in tactical gear, trying to reconcile rescuer with threat. I'm Kane Bishop. I served with your grandfather in Vietnam. I promised him I'd look after his family. That includes you. Something in his voice, the weight of old oaths and older debts, convinced her. She nodded and opened the door fully. How many guards? 6 that I've seen, maybe more. Can you move? I can run. Then let's run. They moved back down the hallway, Kane leading, Maya staying close. His radio crackled. Tank. 3rd guard neutralized. We're clear to the west exit. Shadow. 2 more guards on 1st floor, heading upstairs. You've got maybe 60 seconds. The stairs loomed ahead. Kane could hear boots on metal, voices calling out, the guards realizing something was wrong. No time for subtle. He keyed his radio. All units, we're compromised. Extract now, combat protocol. The warehouse erupted. Tank and Doc burst from their position, engaging guards with non-lethal rounds that still hit hard enough to drop grown men. Shadow and Crow provided covering fire from below. Kane pulled Maya down the stairs at a run, old knees forgetting to hurt when adrenaline took over. A guard appeared at the bottom of the stairs, weapon raising. Kane fired first, double tap to the chest that punched through body armor and dropped the man hard. Lethal force, no choice, no time for alternatives. They hit the 1st floor moving. Maya was keeping up, terror lending her speed. The west exit appeared ahead, Tank waving them forward. Doc providing cover. Almost there, almost safe. The explosion came from nowhere, a shaped charge that blew the west door off its hinges and sent Tank flying backward. Kane saw it happen in slow motion. His oldest friend lifted and thrown by the blast wave, hitting the concrete floor hard enough to crack bones. Doc was on him instantly, medic training overriding everything else. Tank was moving, trying to sit up, blood streaming from a gash on his forehead. Kane processed it all in the 2 seconds it took to realize they'd walked into exactly what Tank had warned about. The trap. Armed men poured through the blown doorway, 6 of them. Professional contractors with the same gear and precision as the ones who'd threatened Elena. They had this planned, had known the rescue attempt would come. Had used Maya as bait to draw out RideSafe's leadership. Kane shoved Maya behind cover, returned fire, his shots forcing the contractors to slow their advance. Shadow and Crow appeared from the other direction, catching the enemy in crossfire. The warehouse became chaos, muzzle flashes strobing in the darkness, ricochets screaming off metal surfaces. Tank, can you move? Doc's voice over the radio, urgent and professional. Ribs broken, maybe internal bleeding. Give me 30 seconds. We don't have 30 seconds. Kane made the tactical calculation in microseconds. They were pinned, outgunned, the contractors moving to flank. Standard procedure said secure the package and extract. But the package was Maya, and getting her out meant leaving Tank behind until Doc could stabilize him for transport. Shadow Crow, cover our 6. Kane's commands came automatically, the same tone he'd used as a lieutenant directing fire teams in Vietnam. Tank, Doc will get you mobile. Maya, stay on me. Do exactly what I say. The young woman nodded, too scared to speak. Kane moved toward the east exit, the one Shadow and Crow had secured. Maya followed, staying low. Behind them, concentrated fire kept the contractors occupied. Almost there. Almost out. Then Sheriff Rita Morgan's voice cut through the chaos from outside. Federal agents, cease fire. Cease fire now. The shooting stopped, sudden silence more shocking than the noise had been. Kane reached the exit and saw Rita standing between their escape route and 3 FBI vehicles, lights flashing, agents deploying behind her. What the hell is this, Rita? Her face showed genuine confusion and anger. I got a call from Thornton's office 30 minutes ago. Anonymous tip about a RideSafe operation in Spartanburg. I came to provide coordination, but the FBI beat me here. Kane understood immediately. Thornton had known about the warehouse, had known they'd attempt rescue, had set this up to catch them in an illegal operation, give him legitimate grounds for arrest. The contractors were melting away, disappearing through a back exit the FBI conveniently left unguarded. The whole thing was theater, a performance designed to look like Ride Safe had gone rogue, attacking innocent security guards, endangering civilians. Deputy Director Thornton emerged from one of the vehicles, satisfaction written across his face. Kane Bishop, you're under arrest for assault, unlawful entry, weapons charges, and about a dozen other felonies I'm going to enjoy listing. Behind them, Doc had Tank on his feet, the big man moving despite obvious pain. Shadow and Crow flanked them, weapons lowered but ready. They were gauntleted, trapped between federal authority and the consequences of trying to do right in a corrupt system. Rita stepped forward. Michael, I need to see your warrants. We don't need warrants when we catch someone in the act. You need warrants to be on scene at all. How did you know about this location? Who called it in? That's need-to-know information. Then I need to know, because from where I'm standing, this looks like you had advance intelligence about a rescue operation targeting a kidnapping victim, which raises questions about how you got that intelligence and why you didn't coordinate with local law enforcement. Thornton's confidence wavered. He'd expected clean arrests, not Rita Morgan challenging his authority on procedural grounds. The FBI agents were shifting, uncertain, reading the tension between their boss and the sheriff. Maya Marshall chose that moment to step forward, moving past Kane despite his attempt to hold her back. I'm Maya Marshall. These men rescued me from kidnappers. The men who were holding me worked for Richard Castellano, the same man Deputy Director Thornton has been protecting for 40 years. Miss Marshall, you don't know what you're saying. Thornton's voice had gone cold. I know exactly what I'm saying. My sister Sophie is a journalist investigating human trafficking. She was kidnapped by Victor Cross, who works for Castellano, who has connections to federal officials, including you. This is all documented, all recorded. And if you arrest these men for rescuing me, every news outlet in the country will know about it by morning. The standoff stretched. Kane could see Thornton calculating, weighing his options, realizing the trap had become his own. Arresting Ride Safe now would invite scrutiny he couldn't afford. Not with a rescued victim contradicting the narrative. Not with Rita Morgan promising procedural challenges. Not with his own history about to become public knowledge. Stand down, Thornton finally said to his agents. Let them go, sir. I said stand down. We'll pursue this through proper channels. The FBI agents reluctantly lowered weapons, confusion evident. They'd been told this was a righteous takedown of vigilantes. Now their boss was backing off at the first sign of complications. Kane gathered his team and moved past the federal vehicles, Rita providing escort. Tank leaned heavily on Doc, breath shallow, definitely injured seriously enough to need a hospital. But they'd made it out. They had Maya. They'd survived the trap. As they loaded into their vehicles, Kane's phone buzzed with a message. Victor Cross. Told you it was real. Told you there would be complications. Still trust the system to handle this? Kane didn't respond. Just started the engine and drove away from Spartanburg with his team battered but intact. Maya Marshall safe, but her sister still vulnerable, and 60 hours left on a countdown that was starting to feel impossible. The hospital in Asheville smelled like antiseptic and lost time. Tank lay in recovery, 3 cracked ribs and internal bruising that could have killed a younger man. Doc sat beside him, monitoring vitals with the same intensity he'd brought to triage stations in Vietnam. Kane stood at the window watching dawn break over the mountains, counting hours that slipped away like water through broken fingers. 42 hours left. Boss, Tank's voice came rough with pain and medication. You need to move. Cambodia won't wait. Not leaving until you're stable. I'm stable enough. Doc can handle this. Sarah needs you more than I do. Kane turned from the window, studied his oldest friend's face. 65 years of hard living, harder choices, and the absolute loyalty that defined Brotherhood. They'd survived Vietnam together, built Ride Safe together, fought this war together for 15 years. Semper Fi, brother. Always faithful. Tank managed a weak smile. Now get the hell out of here and bring your daughter home. The flight to Phnom Penh took 26 hours with layovers. Precious time bleeding away while Kane sat in airport terminals halfway around the world from everything he needed to protect. Doc came with him, medical bag packed for field trauma. Shadow met them in Bangkok, brought local contacts and weapons that couldn't pass through customs. They crossed into Cambodia by car, avoiding official channels, entering on tourist visas that would expire long before they finished what they came to do. Shadow's contact was a former ARVN soldier named Nguyen Van Hai, 68 years old, who'd escaped Saigon in 75 and never stopped hating communists or traffickers or anyone who preyed on the vulnerable. Hai drove them through Phnom Penh's chaotic streets, motorbikes swarming like insects, heat pressing down like a physical weight. The city smelled like fish sauce and diesel fuel, and 30 years of trying to rebuild after genocide. Cambodia had survived the Khmer Rouge, but never quite recovered, leaving spaces where corruption flourished and people disappeared without questions. The Golden Lotus Garment Factory sat on the outskirts, a concrete building behind chain-link fence, guards at the gate checking identification. Hai drove past once for reconnaissance, then parked 3 blocks away in an alley that smelled like rotting vegetables. 12 guards visible, Hai reported in accented English. 2 shifts, 6 per shift. They rotate every 12 hours. Workers enter at 6 morning, leave at 6 evening. Supervisors stay late sometimes, checking quotas. Sarah would be a supervisor, Kane said quietly. Victor said they'd promoted her, given her authority over other prisoners. Making her complicit, Doc added. Classic trafficking tactic. Break them, then give them small power over others. Creates Stockholm Syndrome. Makes escape psychologically impossible, even when physically possible. Kane stared at the factory through binoculars, watching women enter the gates, heads down, exhausted. Somewhere in that building was his daughter, 31 years old now, 15 years stolen, turned into something he might not recognize. How do we get in? Hai smiled, showing gold teeth. I deliver produce to factory kitchen twice per week. Today is delivery day. You hide in truck, I get you inside fence. After that, you on your own. What about extraction? Hai pulled out keys. My cousin owns boat dock, 2 kilometers from here. You get to river, boat waiting, 40 minutes to Vietnamese border. From there, you disappear. And if we're caught, then Cambodia has 2 more prisoners and I deny everything. The plan was insane, amateur, the kind of operation that got people killed in war movies. It was also the only option they had. Kane checked his watch. 38 hours left. If Castellano was moving assets, Sarah could be gone by tomorrow. We go tonight, Kane decided, after workers leave, before new shift arrives. 7 p.m. minimum guards, maximum confusion. Doc checked his medical supplies. I can handle trauma, but not major surgery. If someone gets hit badly, they die. Then we don't get hit. They spent the day in Hayes' cramped apartment, reviewing schematics Miguel had pulled from city records, planning entry routes and extraction paths, trying to prepare for every variable while knowing the first shot fired would invalidate every plan. Kane tried to sleep and couldn't. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Sarah at 16, laughing in that leather jacket. Then Sarah at 31, standing in a factory, eyes dead behind survivor's mask. What would he say to her? How did you apologize for 15 years? How did you explain that you'd never stopped looking while she'd stopped hoping? His phone buzzed. Text from Tank. Maya confirmed everything. Sophie backing her testimony. Rita has enough for warrants, but Thornton blocking at federal level. Need you to finish this. Another text, this one from Victor Cross. Castellano knows you're in Cambodia. He's moving Sarah tonight. 8 p.m. local. If you want her, you need to hit the factory now. Kane showed Shadow the message. Could be a trap, could be the truth. Victor's been right about everything else. Doc voiced what they were all thinking. If we go now, in daylight, we lose every tactical advantage. If we wait until dark, Sarah might be gone. The impossible choice. Risk everything on Victor's intelligence or follow the cautious plan and possibly lose Sarah forever. Kane made the call. We go now. Full daylight assault. Hi, can you get us inside in 30 minutes? The old Vietnamese soldier nodded. I can get you inside. Getting out, that depends on you. They loaded into Hai's produce truck, hiding among crates of vegetables and rice, weapons wrapped in plastic. The truck bounced through streets, turned corners, finally stopped at the factory gate. Kane heard Hai talking to guards in Khmer, jovial and familiar. The conversation of men who'd done this exchange 100 times. The gate opened. The truck rolled forward into the compound. Kane counted seconds, measuring distance, mapping the space in his mind. The truck stopped. High knocked twice on the cargo wall. They emerged fast, Doc and Shadow flanking Kane, moving with the coordinated precision of men who'd done this in places where mistakes meant death. The loading dock was empty, workers on the factory floor, guards patrolling perimeter. Kane led them through a service door, found stairs leading up. Second floor, where supervisors worked, where Sarah would be managing quotas and breaking spirits because that's what you did to survive. The building smelled like sweat and fabric dye and desperate hope. They reached the second floor. Long hallway, offices on both sides. The sound of sewing machines, a constant industrial drone. Kane moved door to door, checking, searching, conscious of every second passing, every moment they were exposed. Third door on the left stood partially open. Kane looked inside and the world stopped. Sarah Bishop sat at a desk, reviewing production sheets, wearing the same clothes from the photograph. Older, harder, her blonde hair pulled back severe, but unmistakably his daughter. She looked up as the door opened wider, saw three armed men in her doorway, and her hand moved toward the phone. "Don't!" Kane's voice came out broken. "Sarah, it's me, it's Dad." She froze, recognition and disbelief warring across her face. "No, you're not real. This is another test, another trick. I'm real. I've been looking for you for 15 years. I never stopped. I'm here to take you home." "There is no home." She stood slowly, hands shaking. "They said you stopped looking, that you gave up. They lied. I've searched every day. Built an entire organization to find missing people because I couldn't find you." Tears started down her face, 15 years of grief and rage and broken hope pouring out. Why did it take so long? Why did you let them keep me? The question broke something in Kane's chest that had been held together by duty and determination. Because I failed. Because I wasn't good enough. Because the people who took you were protected and powerful and I couldn't touch them until now. Sarah moved around the desk, stopped 3 feet away, studying his face. "You're old. You got old. So did you. I'm sorry for what I became, what I had to do to survive. You survived. That's all that matters." The moment shattered as alarms blared. Guards responding, voices shouting, boots pounding on stairs. Shadow moved to the door, weapon ready. Doc grabbed Sarah's arm. "We're leaving. Now." They ran, back down the hallway, stairs appearing ahead. Guards below, blocking the route. Shadow fired, dropped 2, and the factory erupted into chaos. Workers screaming, diving for cover, the sound of automatic weapons impossibly loud in confined space. Kane led them toward the loading dock, the same route they'd entered. Almost there, almost out. Then Sarah stumbled, went down hard, and Kane saw blood spreading across her leg. "I'm hit." Her voice stayed calm, shock overriding pain. "Keep going, not without you." Doc was already working, hands moving with the practiced efficiency of a man who'd patched wounds under fire for half a century. Through and through, no arterial damage. She can walk if we support her. They hauled Sarah up, Doc on one side, Kane on the other, moving toward daylight, visible through the loading dock. Shadow provided rear cover, his shots precise and economical, dropping guards who got too close. High's truck was gone. The old soldier had done his part, gotten them inside, and disappeared before the shooting started. Smart. Professional. Kane couldn't blame him. "River's 2 kilometers east," Shadow said. "We run for it." They ran, Sarah between them, blood trailing, guards pursuing. Through the factory gate, onto Phnom Penh streets, crowded with motorbikes and pedestrians. People scattered, screaming, wanting no part of violence that reminded them too much of darker times. Kane's lungs burned, his knees screamed protest. His age finally catching up with desperation. Beside him, Doc was laboring just as hard, 64 years old and carrying half of Sarah's weight. Shadow ranged ahead, clearing path, his Macy V SOG training still operational after 50 years. The river appeared, brown water moving slow and thick. High's cousin's dock looked abandoned until a small boat motor fired up. Nguyen family helping anyone who fought against darkness. They reached the dock with guards 50 meters behind. Sarah was graying out from blood loss and shock. Doc was stumbling, his medical bag left behind somewhere. Shadow stood at the doc's entrance, weapon raised, buying them seconds they desperately needed. "Get her in the boat," Shadow said calmly. "I'll hold them. You're coming with us. Someone needs to make sure they don't follow. Someone needs to buy time for extraction." Kane understood immediately. Shadow was offering himself, trading his life for theirs, doing what warriors did when the mission required sacrifice. No hesitation, no regret, just tactical necessity. "Brother, make it count, Lieutenant." Shadow's smile was fierce and final. "Semper Fi." He turned back toward the pursuing guards as Kane and Doc loaded Sarah into the boat. The engine roared, pulling them away from the dock, away from Shadow's last stand. The sound of gunfire followed them downriver, Shadow's methodical shooting buying seconds that became minutes, that became escape. Doc worked on Sarah in the boat's bottom, applying pressure, starting IV fluids from his kit. She was conscious, barely, eyes finding Kane's face. "He died for me." The man with the scar. He died. His name was Sam Chen. "He was my brother. He would do it again." "Why? Because that's what Marines do. We don't leave each other behind. But you left me for 15 years, I know. And I'll spend whatever time I have left making it right." The boat crossed into Vietnamese waters, Vietnamese officials who'd been paid in advance looking the other way. From Vietnam to Thailand by car, documents purchased that would pass casual inspection. From Thailand to South Korea on commercial flight. Sarah traveling on a passport Miguel had arranged remotely. From Seoul to Los Angeles. Finally American soil, finally safe. The FBI met them at LAX, but not Thornton's people. These were Rita Morgan's contacts, agents who still believed in justice over politics. They took statements, documented Sarah's injuries, began building the case that would finally bring down Richard Castellano. Tank met them in North Carolina, recovered enough to stand but moving carefully. He and Kane embraced without words, the kind of reunion only possible between men who had survived together. Sophie and Maya Marshall came to the compound. Sisters reunited, Tommy Marshall's daughters alive because Kane had kept a 44-year-old promise. They cried together, all of them, releasing grief and rage and relief that justice might finally happen. But Shadow's chair stayed empty. His motorcycle sat in the compound garage waiting for a rider who would never return. They held a memorial service, proper Marine honors, flags and rifle salute, and the aching knowledge that the price of victory was always counted in lost brothers. 6 months later, the Last Stop Diner underwent transformation. New ownership through Ride Safe's community cooperative. Missing persons posters on walls alongside photographs of recovered victims. 2 brass plaques marking tables 15 and 3, honoring heroes and those who noticed. Elena Hayes ran the diner now, training service workers to spot trafficking signs, creating a network that spanned the interstate system. She wore a silver Ride Safe patch on her uniform, earned through action and dedication. Kane came every morning at 7, black coffee, table 15. Sarah sometimes joined him, her recovery slow but progressing, therapy helping her rebuild an identity beyond victim and survivor. They didn't talk much, didn't need to, just sat together, father and daughter, making up for lost time one quiet morning at a time. Tank's health was declining, the Spartanburg injuries compounded by age and too many years carrying weight that broke men half his age. He still came to the compound, still coordinated rescues, still led with the steady competence that made men follow him into darkness. One morning, 3 months after Cambodia, Kane found Tank sitting at table 15, coffee untouched, staring at nothing. "Gunny?" "Just remembering, Lieutenant, all the brothers who didn't make it home. Danny Kowalski, Tommy Marshall, Shadow. So many ghosts. They saved us. We saved others." The chain continues. Tank smiled, tired but genuine. Yeah, it does. He died that night, heart attack, peaceful in sleep. The doctors said for a 65-year-old Vietnam veteran with his medical history, he'd lived far longer than expected. Kane knew differently. Tank had lived exactly as long as needed to see Sarah home and the mission secured. The funeral drew hundreds, Marines from 5 decades, missing persons' families, survivors who owed their lives to Ride Safe. They buried Tank with full honors, next to Shadow's memorial marker, two brothers finally resting after long wars. Afterward, Kane stood alone in the cemetery until Elena found him. He made it matter, she said quietly. Everything he did, everyone he saved, it mattered, I know. What happens now? To ride safe? To the mission? It continues. Because that's what Tank would want, what Shadow would want, what every brother who didn't make it home would want. Richard Castellano's arrest happened 2 weeks later, federal agents executing warrants at his Costa Rica estate, extraditing him to face charges spanning 50 years. Victor Cross testified in exchange for immunity, revealing networks that reached into government, law enforcement, corporate America. Deputy Director Thornton resigned pending investigation, his protection of Castellano no longer sustainable under media scrutiny. The trials would take years. Some guilty would escape through legal technicalities. But the network was broken, the pipeline disrupted, the message sent that no one was untouchable. Kane stood on the ride-safe compound porch one evening, watching sunset paint the mountains in shades of orange that still reminded him of Vietnam. Sarah appeared beside him, moving easier now, the limp from her gunshot wound barely noticeable. You think about going back, she asked, to find the others? The women still trapped? Every day. Then why don't you? Because I'm 62 years old and I've lost too many brothers. Because someone needs to teach the next generation. Because at some point, warriors have to become teachers or the war never ends. Elena's learning fast. She is. In a few years, she'll be ready to lead. Until then, I help where I can. Sarah was quiet for a moment. I met with Sophie Marshall yesterday. She's writing a book about trafficking networks, about Ride Safe, about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. What did you tell her? That my father never stopped looking, never quit, never surrendered. That those old Marine values actually mean something. Kane felt his throat tighten. Those values are the only things that kept me alive. They kept me alive too, even when I'd given up hope, even when I thought no one cared. Some part of me remembered that you taught me never to quit. That kept me going. The diner lights came on in the distance, warm against gathering darkness. Elena inside, serving coffee, watching customers, ready to write another help note if someone needed saving. The work continued. The mission endured. A young man pulled into the compound on a motorcycle, 20-something, nervous energy radiating off him. He approached the porch, stopped at respectful distance. Are you Kane Bishop? I am. My sister disappeared 6 months ago. 40 rest stop. Police said she ran away, but I know something's wrong. I know. Kane looked at Sarah. She nodded, understanding. This was why they'd survived. This was what all the pain and loss and sacrifice had purchased. The chance to keep fighting. The opportunity to save one more person from darkness. Come inside, Kane said. Tell me everything. As they walked toward the compound, the young man following, Sarah stayed on the porch. She pulled out her phone, texted Elena. New case coming. Young man, desperate, needs hope. Elena's response was immediate. We'll find her, just like Kane found you. Sarah watched her father disappear into the building, already assembling the team, already planning the next rescue. 62 years old, scarred by war and time and loss, but still fighting because fighting was what Marines did. Still faithful because Semper Fidelis meant always, not just when it was easy. The highway stretched in both directions, carrying people toward unknown destinations. Some running from darkness, some toward light, and some, like everyone Kane had trained, learning to be the light that helped others find their way. One napkin at a time, one rescue at a time, one brother keeping faith with another, across decades and death and every darkness the world could throw at them. Always faithful until the last breath, until the mission was complete, until every lost soul found their way home.